The command room of the naval encirclement of warships. Major General Kebi, after repeated observation by the scouts, it has now been determined that the fragrance snake of the 9 snake pirates is slowly approaching us. The 3 Hancock sisters and their cadres are all dispatched. A major hurried in with the debriefing papers in his hand. Is the information true? Can you confirm the intention of their trip, whether to make peace, or are they really planning to attack us? Kirby in the main seat asked in a deep voice. For some reason, from the beginning, an ominous premonition lingered in his heart, which persisted for a long time. I always feel that there is a problem in some part. Although the distance is relatively far, and the sky is darkening, it is difficult to see the details, but in the report, the members of the 9 snake pirates are indeed fully armed, and the offensive intention is quite obvious, the colonel quickly replied. Since this is the case, according to the original plan, once the 9 snake pirates enter the combat range of the warship, fire artillery fire immediately. Kirby knows that now is not a time when he is indecisive because of an intuition, and the battlefield is changing rapidly. What's more, what he has to face now is the old-fashioned Qiwuhai with terrifying background. The main warships around the island have gathered here, right? And the reporters on the warships, remember to let them record the attack scene of the 9 snake pirates. To be on the safe side, Kirby still mobilized all the surrounding warships. The goal of their trip itself is to capture the pirate queen Boyahan Cook. Previously, Kirby was still distressed. If the sinister and cunning 9 snake pirates huddled in the Amazon Lily Kingdom and used the kingdom's residents as a cover, then their various actions would become constrained. After all, the residents are innocent, and they are the objects their navy should protect. And now, Hancock dares to leave the island with such a big fanfare to initiate a war, then he is destined to pay for his so-called arrogance and arrogance. Yes. The officers were gearing up for action and started to take action one after another. Soon, the remaining 4 warships in charge of the Hancock capture mission approached. The 5 warships were lined up. Under the operation of the Navy, the heavy artillery on the ship creaked, and countless pitch-black muzzles adjusted their angles, aiming at the perfume snake, which was gradually exposed in the field of vision. As the top executive officer of this operation, Kirby, wearing the cloak of justice, stood on the deck of the main warship with a group of generals, preparing to face the 9 snake pirates led by Hancock. In addition to strictly implementing the order to abolish Shichibukai's uniforms, they have another important task in this operation. That is to show the pirates the world government's new superweapon, SSG. Of course, everyone present was full of enthusiasm, wanting to fight against a powerhouse known as the Pirate Empress. While training themselves, they could also better train their soldiers. And the inner thought of most generals is that more or less they have to go up and do his mother's cannon and kill a few pirates. Otherwise, a secret weapon will be sent to crush the audience at once. What will they use to claim credit? What to use to get promoted and rich? Although the entire navy was on alert and the artillery was moving in unison, the perfume snake on the front was still calm and the outer wheel turned round and round, maintaining a regular and slow forward speed. The pirates on the pirate ship were also motionless, did not turn the muzzle to actively attack, nor did they want to turn their heads to avoid. Strange, so strange. Kirby was holding a telescope, and he had been paying attention to Hancock and the others on the ship since just now. From a distance, it seems that the other party is threatening, ignoring the warning issued by the Navy and going his own way, but the more this is the case, the more strange it is. Why? Those people are all maintaining a fixed posture, no matter how concentrated they are. The most basic communication is always needed, right? And many more. Suddenly, Kirby discovered some rather important information. What about the 2 sea snakes that have been inseparable from the 9 snake pirates all the year round, dragging the pirate ship forward? If Hancock really wants to attack them at sunset, as mentioned in the communication, how can he not bring the 2 nimble sea snakes and choose the clumsy outer wheel drive? The intense unease turned into a rapidly accelerating heartbeat, and Kebi, who finally realized that something was wrong, rushed to the edge of the deck, waved his hand, and shouted at the warships on both sides. All warships listened to the order and immediately launched artillery bombardment on the pirate ship in front. Ah! How is this different from what was promised? The other party has clearly not entered the range of precision strikes. Although the warship commanders and artillerymen had doubts in their hearts, the military orders were like mountains. After a short period of stunnedness, they still firmly carried out Major General Kebi's orders and lit the warship's artillery. Boom boom boom. Bright flames spewed out, and countless heavy black cannonballs pierced the night sky and fell straight towards the direction of the perfume snake. In just an instant, there was an overwhelming explosion in the sea around the perfume snake. The powerful artillery shells blasted water columns several meters high, and the waves on the calm sea surface rolled in an instant, and the flames shot into the sky. Strangely, despite facing such an intensive fire bombardment, the perfume snake still did not respond, maintaining a silent and unwavering attitude. It was precisely because there was no evasion action that the naval artilleryman found a chance, and finally a cannonball landed precisely on the deck of the perfume snake. Boom. The shells exploded on the deck, and the resulting impact of flames instantly engulfed the pirates on the deck. Boom. Several more shells hit the mast in the main cabin of the perfume snake, with amazing power blooming like a flaming beast, ruthlessly swallowing the perfume snake, which gradually stopped and then sank. As the pirate wax figure on the deck melted little by little, the pirate ship that cast the legend of the pirate Queen Boyahan Cook sank at the door of its own house in just a few minutes, in the wind belt. Major General Kebi, did I read it wrong? Why, even if the pirates of the 9 snake pirates were hit by the artillery, they were indifferent and showed no signs of resistance? Seeing that Hancock's perfume snake was sunk so easily, the generals on the warship who were immersed in the dream of raising their rank finally realized the seriousness of the matter. Kirby didn't respond, but stared at the sea not far from where the perfume snake sank. Through the bright firelight, you can vaguely see that it was the head of Hancock who was blown away by the shell. Like a candle, gray head, oops, hit, damn Mr. 3. Rao is the calm Kebi at this moment, can't help but rage, violently pinching the fence of the ship's deck to smash. The whole ship listens to the order and immediately starts the maximum horsepower and sails to the daughter island. A euro on the other side, there is a hidden cove at the back of Daughter's Island. Gurgling, the 2 sea snakes of the missing 9 snake pirates appeared here. Under Hancock's order, they dragged the last batch of wax residents to the bottom of the sea. The only remaining important cadres of the 9 snake pirates, such as Mr. 3 and Granny Zaw, were among them. With the protection of the sturdy candle coating, they could reach the bottom of the sea safely and connect with the mercenary organization of Bucky Express. The bright full moon hangs high in the night sky, only to hear a guru sound, and a few bubbles emerge from the calm sea level. After this movement, the Amazon lily of Nuada fell into a dead silence until the Navy who are in a hurry set foot here. Looking at the empty city of 9 snakes, a banner with the words, Mr. 3 of the Bucky Pirates is here, was planted. Yatsushiro greeted him once, and his lungs were about to explode. But even so, it didn't change the fact that they were played by each other. It's really the same as the information collected, Mr. 3, he really is a scheming brain. Kirby's supposedly high-spirited face was full of decadence. He never imagined that his strict blockade, careful layout, and seriousness of mind would turn into flying ashes when Mr. 3, the man, infiltrated into Daughter Island, and was vulnerable. The gap between the 2 sides is too great. This time I go back, it is estimated that Mr. Garp and Mr. Sengoku will take it as a joke. Maybe, he will get a few iron fists from Mr. Garp. Kirby sighed helplessly. Major General Kebi, they must not have gone far, we are chasing at full speed now, it should be too late. A colonel who was unwilling to be played with applause in such a way spoke out angrily. The other generals also followed suit, gnashing their teeth, wishing that the damned Mr. 3 would be captured and slashed by 1,000 swords. Facing the indignation of his subordinates, Kirby looked up at the full moon above his head and shook his head in distress and powerlessness. It's already completely dark, and the surrounding area is a windless sea area that is inconvenient to move around. Chasing. Where should we chase? Until this time, Kirby realized with hindsight that the previous provocative book, The 9 Snake Pirates Launched the General Attack at Sunset, actually had such a meaning. If the so-called general attack is a pretense, then sunset is a trap that quietly drags time into the night, making it difficult for them to pursue. Oh, I still have a long way to go. Comparing this defeat, although Kebi was unwilling, he was convinced of the defeat. Hearing his analysis, the generals also recovered from their extreme anger. Realizing that the situation was over, they all squatted on the ground, hammered their feet, and their faces were full of disappointment. In the open sea where no one noticed, a huge pirate ship was quietly approaching. The pirate flag with 3 skulls fluttered in the wind. It was the Blackbeard pirates. A euro at the same time. Stay away from a certain sea area of a euro Daughter's Island. 2 merchant ships, one large and one small, were sailing on the quiet sea level. The hulls of the ships pushed the seawater out in waves, reflecting the moonlight that was projected down into shimmering stars. Inside a small merchant ship, a long conference table. Mr. 3 sat opposite Hancock, and on both sides were the core members of the 9 Snake Pirates, including Granny Zaw. About the next action plan. As the absolute spokesman for the operation, Mr. 3 unceremoniously gave instructions. Needless to say, the 9 Snake Pirates, no, now it should be said that you elite cadres led by Hancock, referred to as the Hancock Force. The next task is naturally to follow me back to the Clown Bucky, the base camp of the pirates, Qiwuhai. Now it is under siege by the troops led by the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters, and we need the support of our strength. Only in this way can we completely defend Qiwuhai and show our strength to the world. Hearing this, Hancock, who was sitting opposite, frowned and snorted rather displeased. Obviously, the arrogant nature of her has not been able to adapt to the matter of joining other people's pirates. However, for Mr. 3, the first beauty in the pirate world didn't throw the table in anger on the spot, which is the best performance. It means that at least for now, she is really willing to stay under the name Bucky Pirates, but it takes a little time to adapt. The concubine has no opinion. To be precise, even if you don't let us support Bucky the Clown, we will choose to go. Hancock puffed out his cheeks slightly, and a volcanic fire was accumulating in his encompassing chest. As a pirate queen across the New World, not only did she fail to defend her territory, but she also paid for the pirate ship that had fought for many years, and finally got into the bottom of the sea in despair. This made her feel very angry, and she desperately needed a hearty battle to release the anger that had nowhere to go. Haha, if that guy Bucky heard this, he would definitely be moved to tears. Mr. 3 laughed. From the time of evacuation, he noticed that the Empress's address for himself changed from me to concubine. This is a recognition of his strength and a direct expression of seeing him as a partner. Among them, the relationship of being a slave of the Tianlong people definitely plays a crucial role. Even the tyrannical domineering is not so easy to use. Granny Zaw, who was sitting next to Hancock, took the message and said, "The cadres of the original pirate group don't really matter. After all, they are all first-class powerhouses." As soon as these words came out, the beautiful warriors on both sides floated up one after another. "I hate it, mother-in-law. Although we are indeed strong, we are nothing in front of the third brother." "That's right, if possible, I still want the third brother to see my strength from the heroic appearance of the battle, rather than relying on your mouth to say that. Actually, it's not that great. In my case, the highest I've ever killed is a little pirate with a bounty of 5 million. A euro, Zaw grandma. These stinky girls are really not reserved at all, and after a short while, they started shouting like the third brother and the third brother. But speaking of it, Mr. 3 does have an indescribable charm about him, and the more he looks at it, the more pleasing the eye is. If the old body is 4 or 50 years younger, ah bah. The mother-in-law hurriedly shook her head violently to get rid of the messy thoughts. Boom. The snake crutch put a pestle on the ground, interrupting the discussion of the beautiful warriors. After sobering up, she looked at Mr. 3, who did not change her face, and said in a deep voice, "What I care more about is the residence of Amazon Lily on the large merchant ship behind. How do you want to arrange it? Although the Amazon Lily Kingdom is domineering per capita, in a sense, it is a genetically powerful fighting nation. But in the final analysis, they are just ordinary citizens who are closed to the country, and they don't even have a general understanding of what kind of creature a man is. It's fine in normal times. Even if they leave Daughter's Island, which is protected by the windless belt, they can quickly adapt to the outside environment. But now is an extraordinary period. After the Qiwuhai system was abolished, the pirates of the New World were eager to move, and the Navy launched a crusade with great fanfare. The living environment is too bad. Don't worry, in my plan, the residents of Amazon Lily do not need to join the battle between Bucky the Clown and the Navy pirates," Mr. 3 said slowly. "In a slightly higher-end battle, this kind of combat power can only be used as cannon fodder, which basically doesn't play a big role. Brixing Island. This is a deserted island not far from Qiwuhai. The island has a good environment and abundant food. I plan to temporarily place the inhabitants of Amazon Lily there. Recalling the surroundings of Qiwuhai, Mr. 3 suggested, if you don't mind, you can send mercenaries from the Bucky Express mercenary group to defend the island. They are all masters with bounties over 100 million, and their strength is very strong. Reliable. It doesn't have to be that big. Hancock grabbed in front of his mother-in-law, and his words showed unconcealed confidence. They are all children of concubines. If they don't even have the strength to protect themselves, they deserve to die. Quite a cold-blooded speech in the style of a pirate queen. However, Mr. 3 is very clear that she does not want the residents of Amazon Lily to have too much contact with men. After all, in her opinion, even if they are her own, those dirty and ugly men are still unbelievable. Understood. Then establish a fixed point of contact on the island to facilitate their regular intelligence exchanges with you. Mr. 3 did not expose Hancock's true inner thoughts. If you do that, it is estimated that this will have become a stone man. Hancock snorted disdainfully. She also heard the implication of Mr. 3. Isn't this to let them send out a distress signal in time when they are in danger? Damn Mr. 3, the concubines said that they are strong and do not need protection, so why bother? Mr. 3 ignored Hancock, and when Kuang didn't speak, she acquiesced to her arrangement. Turning to look at Granny Zha, she asked, then the residents of Amazon Lily arranged it like this. Granny Zha, do you have anything else to add? This is the best arrangement. The mother-in-law shook her head lightly. After thinking for a few seconds, she raised her head to look at Mr. 3, who had an easygoing and calm face, and asked meaningfully, Mr. 3, before you came, you have already planned the whole plan, right? Are you so confident that we will definitely agree to join the Bucky Pirates? Hearing this, Mr. 3 was stunned for a moment, then scratched his head and laughed dryly. Mother-in-law, don't say it so lightly. In this world, who would dare to say that they can recruit the 9 snake pirates with absolute certainty? Not even the Emperor? Oh, hypocritical man. Hancock snorted. In addition to the undisguised lust, thinking about it carefully, Mr. 3's confidence and firmness in the whole process has reached an unbelievably terrible level, and even has an absolute belief that everything is in control. It's hard to imagine what kind of terrifying situation it would be if such a man was an enemy. Ha ha, ha ha ha. The exposed Mr. 3 smiled awkwardly. So far, this simple meeting on the merchant ship has come to an end. Instead, it was the food time that Mr. 3 was looking forward to. He has hardly eaten after being tired all day, and if he doesn't cook to replenish his energy, it is estimated that he will be starving into a pile of dry wax before he arrives at Qiwuhai. This proposal was instantly unanimously agreed by many cadres of the original 9 snake pirates. Since they were blocked and surrounded by warships of the Navy headquarters, they had not eaten well because of their nervousness. Moreover, through the food, wine and meat, you can better understand the third brother, the legendary figure of the Bucky Pirates, which is simply killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Under this basic premise, the atmosphere of the whole meal is naturally quite harmonious, with talk and laughter. Just when everyone was full and ready to rest for the next Qiwuhai support operation, a pirate ship flying a skull pirate flag quietly approached the merchant ship in the dark of night. Ahahaha, my uncle's luck is so good. I didn't expect to encounter such a big piece of fat in the middle of the night. According to the size of these 2 merchant ships, at least it has to be worth hundreds of millions of Baileys. Brothers, copy guys, get ready to make a fortune. Old rules: men are killed, women are taken away, and all gold and silver jewelry are left. On the pirate ship, the pirate captain who offered a bounty of 800 million laughed loudly, raised his machete in the air and waved it in the air, his mouth from ear to ear. Ha ha ha. Let's remember it well. This night is destined to be memorable. The pirates were divided into 2 groups, and the main force, headed by the captain, Jared the Machete, chose to run in front of a small merchant ship with a much more ornately decorated structure. The rest of the younger brothers drove a slightly smaller pirate ship to approach the large merchant ship, hooked the fence of the large merchant ship with chain iron hooks, and forcibly connected the 2 ships together. Ha ha ha. A lot of women. Brothers have luck this time, a lot of women. Ah. The first pirate to rush on the merchant ship seemed to have discovered paradise, and laughed quite wretchedly. Especially the scream at the back, falling in the ears of the pirate accomplices behind. It is simply a bloody male howl. Grass. I'll just say how this dog rushes so fast, it turns out that his grandmother has such good things. The second pirate cursed and quickly climbed up the large merchant ship along the chain. This sturdy pirate stepped on the railing with one foot, and when he looked up, he saw a dense number of women standing on the deck of the merchant ship. All of them were long-legged beauties dressed in cool clothes. The man's eyes widened with excitement, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously showed a crazy smile, and his mouth was full of laughter. Wow, haha, woman, there are really a lot of women. The incessant rush of desire overwhelmed the mind of this sturdy pirate, completely ignoring the snake bow drawn by the women's hands, as well as the burping companion lying not far away. Women. My uncle is here. The sturdy pirate standing on the railing burst out laughing, his legs exerted force, and he jumped down toward the merchant ship deck. Call out. At the same time, the domineering black arrow with the armed color glowed with the gloomy and cold light of the bright moon, hitting the man's chest with precision, piercing through his flesh and bones, and pinning it on the ship's board with a sound of jung. Thump. The man didn't even have time to let out a scream, so he fell straight on the hard deck, and blood kept pouring out of the hideous blood hole and flowing all over the ground. Really fall into a box. How come these invaders who suddenly approached are so weak that they can't even dodge or carry ordinary arrows? The protector soldiers of the Amazon Lily Kingdom took back their snake bows and arrows, except for a faint doubt. No other emotional fluctuations could be seen on their icy faces. Murder is as simple as commonplace for them who have experienced many battles. Men. Aren't they all powerful and domineering creatures like the third brother Jinbei? Why are these two guys so weak? Where did such a weak man have the courage to attack us? Even the ordinary residents of the Amazon Lily Kingdom, who are slightly weaker, are puzzled. The warriors who protect the country did not use their full strength just now. They just added armament and domineering to the arrows. Most of them can do it. What the hell? The situation is not right. I have to lift my spirits. The woman above seems to be a little wrong. After the two accomplices stopped moving, the pirates also found something unusual on the merchant ship. The team leader who led the team had been a pirate for several years, and he had stolen many civilians from the merchant ships. He was experienced and keenly caught the dangerous atmosphere. So, under the instructions of the squad leader, the pirates dared not be careless and began to rush onto the deck one after another. They want to seize the deck area as soon as possible, take advantage of the absolute crushing of the number of people, quickly kill the fighters on board, and seize the deck area. However, this group of pirates, who had suffered from blood mold for 8 lifetimes, could never have imagined that the women on the entire merchant ship. All are fighters. Unsurprisingly, the boarding battle between the two sides showed a one-sided trend. From the pirates' charge to their defeat, the whole process only took 10 minutes. And the team leader who offered a bounty of nearly 2,000 million was also under the siege of the Amazon Lily protectors, and he couldn't die anymore. The battle on the side of the large merchant ships came to an end with the victory of the female warriors of the Amazon Lily Kingdom. As for the small merchant ships, it happened to be Mr. 3, Hancock, and the elite members of the 9 snake pirates who greeted the pirate captain, Jared the Machete. In the true sense, good luck to explode, beauty, what a beautiful woman, damn it, I have never seen such a perfect woman in my life. Jared stood on the deck of the small merchant ship, looking at the suffocating Hancock who was standing opposite him under the bright moonlight. His breathing became rapid involuntarily. Little ones, she's mine. Don't grab any of you, there will be a fight later, you must remember, don't hurt her a hair, or the ship rules will deal with it. Jared licked the machete in his hand excitedly, and the gaze that fell on Hancock was full of greedy encroachment. Just when he couldn't control himself and wanted to rush over and press the peerless beauty to the ground, the younger brother next to him turned pale with fright and grabbed the corner of his clothes. Old boss, she. That person, is the pirate empress of the Qiwuhai, Boyahan Cook. Also, standing next to her, that is also the cadre of Shicibukai clown Bucky, Mr. 3. The younger brother's feet were trembling uncontrollably, and he even stuttered when he spoke. Pirates like them, who are at the bottom of the new world, only want to rob people in troubled times, but they don't really care about the movements of the pirates at the top. After all, the two are not from the same world. This little brother can recognize Hancock and Mr. 3, just because he usually likes to read the bounty list. Grass. What the hell, Qiwuhai, today is the 4 emperors. Wait, what did you just say? Jared slapped the little brother who was holding him, took a few steps forward, and then reacted with horror in his eyes. Hi. Pirate Queen Hancock, Clown Bucky Pirates, Mr. 3. Even the ignorant New World pirates would never have heard of these two names. They are Qiwuhai. Even if they have been abolished by the world government, they are definitely the top existences in this sea. A little pirate like him, let alone a head-to-head fight, is not qualified to look directly at him. True or false, you motherfucker, don't lie to me. Thinking back to the woman who was too beautiful to describe in words, Jared began to panic a little. No wonder it looks like deja vu. It turns out that he happened to see it on the bounty list before. Wait, that woman, that pirate queen. Where is the person? Looking at the empty place that originally belonged to Hancock in front of him, Jared instantly stood upside down with chills all over his body. Just the name of Qiwuhai overwhelmed him, and the machete in his hand fell with a bang. Invisible coercion attacked head-on, like a terrifying demon descending, and in an instant, Jared took all his strength, and the whole person fell softly on the deck. Don't, please let me go. Just as Jared wanted to beg for mercy, his feet on high heels roared, kicked him in the face, kicked him out more than 10 meters, and slammed into the hull of a large merchant ship. Blood and water mixed with a few broken teeth flew in an arc in the air. I'm worried that I have no place to stretch my muscles and bones. You came very timely. Hancock retracted his long, well-proportioned legs and walked slowly towards Jared lying on the ground, with a wanton smile that captivated all beings on his beautiful face. She didn't use the fruit ability, because doing so would end the fight too quickly. Crunch. Crunch. The sound of high heels stepping on the deck echoed in Jared's head like a death knell. As he said at the beginning, this is destined to be an unforgettable night. Boom. As the huge pirate ship was kicked into a stone ship by Hancock's big fragrant feet and sank to the bottom of the sea, the abused Captain Jared and a group of fleeing pirates were also completely buried in this unknown area. In the sea. Vulnerable trash. Hancock jumped back to the deck of the small merchant ship and patted the dust on her palms. Although the process was bloody, she did not see even a drop of pirate blood on her body, which was quite clean. Don't worry, when you arrive at Kalai Bali, there will be powerful opponents waiting for you. Mr. 3 glanced at the bloodstains on the deck. Although the memory of the original owner Mr. 3 served as a buffer, he still had a slight discomfort. Strictly speaking, this was the first time he had witnessed the cruelty and bloodshed in the world of pirates. Taking into account the impact of reality, anime will not show this cruel side to the audience. But fighting and death are the most basic and common things in the pirate world. In particular, the pirates living in this real world are far more vicious than those in the anime, and they are not some kind-hearted adventurers. Of course, the Navy does not represent absolute justice, but is more of a gray role between black and white. The only thing that is certain is that the world in front of you is complex and twisted, cold and chaotic. Good is not good, evil is not evil, good is evil, and evil is good. As Doflamingo said, justice does not necessarily win, but the victor certainly represents justice. Fist is the only standard that defines good and evil in this world. I still have to improve my strength as soon as possible. Mr. 3 couldn't help but sigh in his heart. With the overall view of the pirate world, he is very aware of the drastic changes that the world will usher in next. The Great War, which is said to be far beyond the top war, has begun to appear in scale. If the combat power is not raised to the level of generals and 4 emperors, all plans will be in vain. Hope so. Hancock raised his head and stared at Mr. 3 ambiguously for a few seconds. In the end, he resisted the sudden urge in his heart, threw the cloak behind him, and walked straight to the merchant ship's exclusive lounge. Mr. 3 stood silently on the spot, tensed up, and didn't say a word. What a joke. Hancock's look just now is clearly not enjoyable, and he wants to use him to practice his posture. In this case, even if he says one more word, it may become an excuse for himself to be beaten. After seeing the brutality of Hancock's legs and feet, Mr. 3, who was afraid of pain, was very conscious. At least at the cusp of this current situation, this woman can't be provoked. Hancock, who was walking in front, deliberately slowed down, waiting for a reason to turn his head towards Mr. 3. Unfortunately, even though she dragged her to the door, there was always silence behind her. With a secret sigh, Mr. 3 is a fine man. Hancock, who couldn't think of a reason, had to silently walk into the cabin. The remaining elite female warriors of the original 9 snake pirates also left the deck with little interest after saying hello to Mr. 3. Hancock was okay. He moved his hands and feet more or less, and they, who were also eager for a smooth battle, watched eagerly and couldn't get involved at all. As for the matter of finding the third brother to practice, let's forget it. They were afraid of not venting their anger, and they would have to be beaten for no reason. That powerful candle explosion fist, but even Lord Sandersonia and Lord Marigold could not fully resist. Soon, the lively deck fell into silence again. This sudden pirate robbery farce is also completely over. Mr. 3 stood on the deck and blew a gust of sea breeze, in order to calm down the coldness and blood of this world in his heart. Then he went back to his room and sat beside the bed. He does not plan to rest for the time being, because there are still many things that need to be studied and pondered. The first is an epiphany after eating the fruit ability development capsule. About the feasibility of using the wax fruit ability to create the same candle soldier as the biscuit soldier in the cradle. Second, it is naturally the system reward obtained after completing the goal, not to mention the same type of sea bike as the former Admiral Aokiji, that can only be used to pretend to be on the road. Mr. Rayleigh domineering lecture is obvious, which can play a key role in improving the cognition and cultivation of the 3-color domineering. And the fruit ability and the 3-color domineering are precisely the 2 things that need to be improved the most at present. Thinking of this, Mr. 3 no longer wastes time, and immediately conducts research on candle soldiers. From the performance of the comics, whether it is the flexibility of the biscuit soldiers or the ability to act on their own, they are more inclined to the fruit itself, rather than relying on the individual development of the ability. In contrast, if you want to create a candle soldier with the ability to fight alone, the difficulty will increase a lot, and it requires higher precision control and proficiency of fruit. Mr. 3 raised his arm and activated his ability. Milky white liquid candles were born out of thin air, flowed to the floor through his arms, and gathered into a large group at a distance of 1 meter. Whoosh whoosh. The candle mass twisted and rolled, gradually changing into strong and hard hands and feet, followed by 8 neatly arranged candle abs, perfectly muscled ribcage, broad shoulders, and a straight back. Finally, the fluid candles converge on the head, interweaving and flowing, evolving into candle helmets similar to medieval knightly styles. Boom. The candle soldier, who is nearly 3 meters tall, has a strong physique and is incomparably handsome, was finished and stood in front of Mr. 3. Not bad. Looking up at the mighty soldier he pinched, Mr. 3 smiled and was very satisfied. Of course, appearance is only the simplest and most basic step, and you can change it at any time according to your preferences. Now comes the hardest part. Getting the candle soldiers moving. Mr. 3 slowly closed his eyes, and after a careful perception, the figure of the candle soldier began to appear in the dim vision. There seemed to be countless invisible candle lines spreading out from this heroic big guy, linking with himself as a capable person. Mr. 3 tried to use will to drive these things that were somewhat similar to puppet lines. The result was unexpectedly simple. With an accuracy of 86% of the fruit ability, the eyes of the candle soldier hidden under the knight's helmet lit up as if they were conscious. Thump. Although his movements were stiff and awkward, driven by Mr. 3, this huge man still knelt down on 1 knee. It really works. Mr. 3 abruptly opened his eyes and looked at the candle soldier who really knelt at his feet. His eyes bulged out and turned into stars like porphyrin. There is no man in the world who can refuse a super big toy that will act on his own will. Although there is still a big gap with the freedom and mobility of the cracker cookie soldier, it turns out that as long as the fruit ability is well developed, the candle soldier is completely feasible. If combined with strong enough knowledge and domineering, this candle soldier will definitely become a killer move that can affect the situation of the battle. Mr. 3 was overjoyed, and in order to test how far he could do it, he planned to go directly to the second link. Take out the system reward, Mr. Rayleigh's domineering lecture hall, and use it. Hum. A dazzling white light flashed, forcing Mr. 3 to close his eyes to avoid the strong light. A touch of smoke was born out of thin air, lingering in the entire room, and the surrounding environment passed by like a revolving lantern. When the refreshing breeze of the forest brushed his cheeks and the crisp bird chirping sounded in his ears, Mr. 3 slowly opened his eyes. I saw that under the earth-shaking environment, An old man in a white cloak and flip-flops walked slowly over the bushes and vines in the forest. A slender and healthy body, bohemian fluttering white hair, and a casual smile that complements domineering and self-confidence. Mr. Three's pupils shrank suddenly. That's right, the person in front of you is the vice captain of the original One Piece, the world's top 3-color domineering powerhouse. Hades Rayleigh. Ding. Teacher Rayleigh domineering lecture is completed. A good teacher can help you avoid detours, surpass yourself and become stronger. Under your humility to study, the current domineering arrogance and armed arrogance have been improved, and the domineering arrogance has been successfully separated from the new and reached the level of ordinary people. The domineering arrogance of the overlord has been greatly improved. In the cabin room, the flickering oil lamp shone faintly. By the time Mr. Three finished the highly experiential simulation teaching and returned to his room, it was already late at night. I thought that this domineering lecture hall could be upgraded in place as long as it was used, but I didn't expect to be beaten by Mr. Rayleigh for such a long time. Mr. Three sat on the soft mattress, his eyes were in a trance, like a merchant ship swaying slightly in the waves at this time. Although the reality has only passed for more than an hour, in the illusion of Mr. Rayleigh's domineering lecture hall, he truly spent 7 days and 7 nights. No, it's not a pure fantasy. Mr. Three raised his hand and stroked his cheek, and could clearly feel the long and thorny beard. He activated his ability and added candles to the oil lamp on the table not far away, so that the small flame burned vigorously and illuminated the entire room transparently. It can be said to be quite practical ability. Mr. Three raised his hand and took off his short sleeves, looked down, and saw dense and superficial scars hanging on his chest and abdomen. That was the beating he had endured in Mr. Rayleigh's actual combat teaching. Facts have proved that the lecture series rewarded by the system is a real person teaching that exists independently in a certain time and space. It is a bit of a rush of black technology, but it is also because of personal experience that the things and knowledge learned are more real and precious. After all, memory and experience can be forced, but the 3-color domineering that is closely related to personal consciousness and beliefs is somewhat illusory if it is not learned in person. Anyway, the overall feeling is pretty good. Mr. Three clenched his fist, felt the power flowing in it, and then exhaled the system panel. The strongest Emperor subsystem, host, Mr. Three. Appearance. 71 physical fitness. B++, lucky value. E+S. The clown Bucky camp has its own buff, it will disappear when it leaves. Ability. Wax fruit. Accuracy 86%, strength 75%, characteristics 71%. Unawakened. Armed color domineering, normal. Scene color domineering, normal. Overlord color domineering, Mang Shin. Props. The same sea-bike as the former Admiral Aokiji. Main line goal. Successfully recruit more than one Shicibukai, new or old, to join the Clown Bucky Pirates, strengthen the force, and take the second-in-command position of the Bucky Pirates. Goal reward, completed. Evaluation A, target reward 2 Qiwuhai, fruit ability development capsule, different dimensional ability training manual, 3-color domineering optional 1 upgrade, teacher to be determined, face value +6. Sub-line goal, Hancock's transcendence, domineering and domineering completely surpass Hancock. Target reward. A book of advanced physical skills. Compared with before finishing Mr. Rayleigh teaching, it can be found that in addition to the 3-color domineering that should be strengthened, the appearance and physical quality have also been slightly improved. Even the 3 indicators of fruit ability have risen by a percentage or 2. It's not just pure 3-color domineering, this lecture series can also benefit other aspects. Seeing Mr. Three whose appearance has increased again is full of joy, although there is only 1 point, but it is also precious. Glancing at target reward 3, Mr. Three expectations suddenly increased. In the second domineering lecture, different teachers will appear. Don't look at the obvious effect of this gadget as just select one of the 3 colors and domineering to upgrade, but according to the growth of Rayleigh's teaching, the final benefit still depends on one's own perception. To put it bluntly, if Teacher Kaido came to teach online, would it be possible to directly knock out the Golden Legend, the domineering entanglement of Overlord? Quite possible. Mr. Three rubbed his palms, looking very excited. After the dream of reaching the sky in 1 step, he regained his composure, patted his face, and continued his previous research and exploration on candle soldiers. Whoosh whoosh. The wax fruit ability is activated, and in the blink of an eye, a huge candle soldier is condensed. Mr. 3 concentrates and tries to control the candle soldier for smoother movements. This time, under the blessing of the enhanced knowledge and domineering, candle soldier's actions are no longer as stiff and awkward as before, and can already perform basic actions such as punching, kicking, and blocking like conventional humanoid weapons. It's a pity that the armed arrogance of the ordinary class cannot be separated from the candle soldiers attached to the body in the distance, unless it is upgraded to the advanced form of flower sakura, that can be released at will. Therefore, the firmness and overall combat power of candle soldiers still depend on the development of the strength of the wax fruit itself. The hardness close to steel is not worth mentioning in the confrontation of the top powerhouses, but if it is used to abuse vegetables, it is still quite refreshing. Mr. 3's thoughts fluttered, and the following scenarios came to mind. Sitting on the boat, with Erlang's legs crossed, he drank coffee leisurely, and right in front, a group of newcomers were abused by the candle soldiers and screamed, fighting to the death. At this time, I slowly put down the coffee and said indifferently, "Sorry, I don't have a smaller candle than this." Whoops. This force is up all of a sudden, okay. The more Mr. 3 thought about it, the more excited he became, and some couldn't wait to rush to Kalai Bali, to the battlefield where the Bucky pirates were located, and try the power of this big guy. You don't have to think about it, this will definitely make Bucky's guys eye-opening and screaming. Perhaps because of spending a week in Mr. Rayleigh's class, Mr. 3 was not too sleepy at this time, but was refreshed and his thinking was quite active. Speaking of brute force, Mr. 3 remembered the only item left on the system panel, the same sea bike as the former Admiral Aokiji. The introduction of the props attached at the back is quite concise. It can be nourished as a black car through the armed color. This is the unexpected reward he got when he awakened the domineering arrogance on his own, and he has not had a chance to show it until now. It is said that it can be nourished into a black car, but even if the strength reaches the level of the black knife of the Eagle Eye, can it be possible to lift up and smash the enemy's face with 2 wheels? Anyway, if you are idle, you will be idle. Let's try this bike of the same model as Aokiji, what's so wonderful about it? Mr. 3's mind moved slightly to extract the marine bicycle from the system space. Unsurprisingly, this is a very ordinary navy blue pedal bicycle, no basket, no back seat, just a manual rattle next to the right handle. Mr. 3 stepped forward, reached out and pressed the rattle. Ding. Ringtones are fairly crisp and loud. Thina euro a euro. There is no then, nothing happens. Is it really a sea bike that can only be used to pretend? Reminiscent of the scene where Aokiji rides a bicycle leisurely on the sea in the anime, Mr. 3 decided to further test the efficacy of this bicycle. Logically speaking, the system should not reward this kind of props, which can be used to buy hundreds of vehicles with Bailey casually. Pushing the bicycle out of the room, he came to the deck of the merchant ship. Mr. 3, who had trimmed his beard and became handsome again, was lying on the bow of the boat and looked under the fence. I saw a bottomless dark sea under the full moonlight, and I couldn't imagine what kind of scene it was in the deepest part. Looking into the distance, it is even more profound. Except for the sound of the rushing waves and the occasional gust of sea breeze, the surrounding is terribly silent. There is an illusion that a deep-sea monster full of fangs will pop up at any time. If Mr. 3 suffered from deep-sea phobia, he would be stunned and shivering on the deck now. Fortunately, he is bold. This is because his own strength is enough to save his life. The wax fruit and the 3-color domineering are enough to deal with most deep-sea beasts. Then let me see what's so special about this bike. The hairstyle on Mr. 3's head ignited a flame, raised his hand to create a large candle, and threw it on the sea level and spread it out to form a 10-square-meter foothold. After making sure that the candles were buoyant enough, he picked up his bike and climbed over the fence, leaping towards the sea. On the sea level at night, small candle blocks were attached to the hull of merchant ships and swayed with the waves. A small hill protruded from the candle block, with a small flame burning on it. Mr. 3 squatted on the candleboard, writing and drawing in his hands, as if he was calculating something. According to the formula of F float equals GT equals I liquid GV rho, if you want to support the weight of me and the bicycle at the same time, the width of the candle channel should be at least 1 meter, and the left and right edges should be tilted to ensure that able to expel a sufficient volume of water. Thinking of this, Mr. 3 paused, and then continued to write on the candleboard. And the bicycle must maintain a forward speed of at least 1.433 meters per second. Otherwise it will not be able to catch up with the sinking speed, causing the bike to overturn and sink into the sea. Although the density of the candle itself is smaller than that of water and insoluble in water, as long as the candle channel is laid in front of the track of the bicycle in advance, it should be able to realize the magical operation of riding on the sea like the green pheasant. But in order to ensure that the whole process is foolproof, Mr. 3 feels that it is necessary to make basic theoretical calculations first. After repeated calculations several times, I finally came up with the safe value of cycling on the sea. It was not until this time that he deeply felt the authenticity of the sentence, learn mathematics, physics and chemistry well, and travel the world without fear. Physics teacher, honestly don't deceive me. Mr. 3 clapped his hands and stood up from the candleboard. The next step was the practice session. Next to it, the miniature version of the candle soldier board stood upright, with candle's palm supporting the sea bike. Even if the comprehensive theoretical values a euro are calculated, Mr. 3, who is cautious and stable by nature, cowardly, still feels that it is necessary to conduct practical simulations. What if the calculated candle channel buoyancy is wrong? What if the trajectory of the bicycle and the candle passage does not match? What should I do if my bike suddenly blows out? He is a devil fruit person, and any accident that causes him to fall into the water will be the end of his life. So at this time, the role of the candle soldier was experienced. Brother, it depends on your performance. Mr. 3 reached out and patted the candle soldier on the shoulder, and controlled it to get on the bicycle. Because it is the same model of Aokiji, the tires of this bicycle are specially designed with anti-skid stripes, so there is no need to worry about slipping on the candle surface while riding it. After controlling the candle soldier to simply ride a few laps on the candleboard without any problems, Mr. 3 started to use the fruit ability to lay a sea candle channel on the path of the candle soldier. If it is the original Mr. 3, it would be difficult to complete the instant generation and solidification of the candle channel with precise requirements for width and thickness. But for Mr. 3, whose fruit ability has been developed at this time, and the three-color domineering has grown, it is an easy task. Sizzle. Just like that, the candle soldier rode his bicycle smoothly and started driving on the sea level. The result is just as Mr. 3 calculated, except for a little sway in the middle, there is no rollover. So, finally relieved, Mr. 3 replaced the candle soldier and rode on the bicycle. Compared with the smooth and steady earth, despite the candle channel as support, riding a bicycle on the turbulent sea is a lot more bumpy, and you need to concentrate at all times to maintain the balance of the bicycle and the body. At the same time, precise and uninterrupted release of the ability to lay candle channels ahead of the wheel is also required. The whole process seems simple, but it has very strict requirements on Mr. 3's fruit ability and mental concentration, as well as physical coordination and adaptability at any time. In this situation of double concentration, the farther and longer the ride, the more pressure Mr. 3 felt, and the sweat oozes from his forehead. It wasn't until he plunged into the sport himself that he realized just how terrifying the strength of the Aokiji, which can easily ride between the two islands. Sure enough, a person at the level of an admiral cannot be measured by the standard of an ordinary person. Mr. 3 finally realized the fundamental reason why Aokiji replaced warships with bicycles. That's not just to pretend, but to do this, you can hone your control over the fruit anytime, anywhere, temper your spirit and will, and then become stronger. And a euro, Mr. 3 looked down at the unremarkable bicycle under him. As the riding distance continues to increase, it can be clearly felt that there is a weak energy flowing into the body and limbs along the handlebars and seat to replenish physical strength. At the same time, it also deepens the exercise of the proficiency of the fruit ability of the sea riding, making it doubled. It is simply a physical power bank plus fruit ability exercise machine. Sure enough, the things that the system rewards are good. Mr. 3 was very pleasantly surprised. Just when he was going to return after riding a circle, a bald head suddenly appeared on the calm sea in front of him. Looking closely through the faint moonlight, it was a kung fu manatee with a strange shape and a cute expression. Ding ding ding. Mr. 3 has quick eyes and quick hands, and hurriedly rang the bell on the handlebar of the bicycle. The kung fu manatee, who appeared out of the sea in a daze, was attracted by the sudden bell, turned his neck a little, and saw the oncoming bicycle. Maybe it was because he never expected something like a bicycle to appear on the sea. This guy blinked his round eyes and froze in place. It was not until the candle channel was laid, the wheels were about to run over the face, and the kung fu manatee with a long reflex arc reacted, his eyes protruded, and his mouth opened wide. It was so frightened that it jumped back into the sea at the last second, and only managed to escape. Oops, sorry, Mr. Manatee. Mr. 3 turned his head and apologized to the kung fu manatee who had resurfaced behind him. Grumpy grumpy. The kung fu manatee's bulging mouth quickly opened and closed, and his little hands kept slapping the seawater, looking like he was scolding. I'm glad to have your forgiveness, I'll pay attention next time. Mr. 3 responded without blushing, and he couldn't understand what Kung Fu Manatee was saying anyway. Kung Fu Manatee. WCNMD. Ha ha ha, I will accept your kindness, and there will be a period later. Feeling Kung Fu Manatee's speechless exasperation, Mr. 3 was in a good mood, whistled, and happily rode his bicycle back to the candleboard at the beginning. Mr. 3. Should you say that you are so idle, or that you are quite leisurely, riding a bicycle in the sea in the middle of the night? As soon as Mr. 3 got off the bicycle from the sea, a charming voice came from the small merchant ship. Looking in the direction from which the sound came, I saw Hancock in black and purple robe pajamas resting his hands on the fence, his beautiful eyes drooping, with a slightly playful look. Whoosh. In the distance from the coastline, a gust of sea breeze blew past, blowing Hancock's beautiful long black hair. The moonlight is bright and pure, an indescribable beauty of the city suddenly appeared in Mr. 3's field of vision, worthy of being the #1 beauty in the pirate world. It's just that the atmosphere at the moment is somewhat embarrassing. Forget it. I'll just say it. Hancock raised his hand to tidy up his dazzling hair, and his pretty face was full of contempt. Mr. 3, your brain looks very wrong. Mr. 3 scratched his head, ignored Hancock's sarcasm, and greeted with a dry smile. Hancock, can't you sleep either? Why are you coming out on the deck to blow the sea breeze so late? Riding a bicycle on the sea in the middle of the night and almost hitting a manatee, Mr. 3, your brain looks really bad. Hancock was expressionless, the snake-shaped earrings swayed in the sea breeze, and he had no intention of responding to greetings. So, why should the same words be emphasized again? Mr. 3 felt helpless. If it were someone else who dared to make fun of himself like this, he would have slapped him with a big mouth. It's a pity that the opposite is the pirate queen Hancock, who can't beat it. Knowing that his behavior is really weird in the eyes of other people, Mr. 3 simply doesn't care about his eyes, and he has the ability to start the bicycle at sea. Cuckoo. The solid candle under his feet bulged quickly, propping him up with his bicycle, over the fence of the small merchant ship, and came to Hancock on the deck. As you can see, Hancock, in order to deal with tomorrow's Kalai Bali battle, I'm doing special training overnight. Mr. 3 said matter-of-factly. Special training? Hancock's eyes rolled and landed on an ordinary sea bike. Aren't you referring to boring things like cycling? She apparently recognized the bike, which looked almost identical to the former Admiral Aokiji. As Qiwuhai, there must be a lot of contact with the Admiral of the Navy, and it is normal to recognize it. You don't understand. This can hone my fruit manipulation ability and speed up the pace of fruit awakening. Mr. 3 explained earnestly. This is the truth. As for the stamina supplement and experience bonus of the bicycle rewarded by this system, it is naturally a secret that cannot be said casually. Seeing that he didn't seem to be joking, Hancock retracted his eyes and asked with a tone of 7-point doubt and 3-point curiosity. Why is it the owner of the domineering? This sea is the most qualified to be the king. Strong. Mr. 3, you are always imitating the Admiral. Whether it's a candle fire breathing similar to a Kainu's move, or riding a bicycle at sea like Aokiji, this is quite incomprehensible in the eyes of Hancock, who is also a domineering bearer. There is no doubt that the powerhouses with domineering are all bold and extremely arrogant guys. For them, learning to imitate others is almost a shame. Because this is absolutely unnecessary. Is that a question? Admirals are the highest combat power of the Navy headquarters. Since they can gain insights from their moves and living habits, improve themselves, and avoid many detours, why not do it? Mr. 3 replied without thinking. A Kainu's fire-breathing power explodes, and Aokiji's bicycle riding can exercise fruit ability and spiritual power. This is the fundamental reason why I study simulation. Because it's beneficial, it doesn't matter. Hancock bowed his head in thought. The Mr. 3 in front of her was different from all the overlords that she had come into contact with. He not only has the tenacity and courage of being a king, but also the shrewdness and cunning of a petty person. He will also apologize to the manatee with a serious expression, without the arrogance of an overlord, and he does not stick to the details. Such people may not be able to become heroes, but they are definitely more terrifying heroes than heroes. When looking at Mr. 3 again, Hancock's eyes were filled with fear. With the addition of the concubines, the Battle of Kalai Bali will definitely end soon. Hancock crossed his chest with his arms, and asked proudly and confidently, although now is not a good time, what the concubine wants to ask is, Mr. 3, which Qiwuhai do you want to recruit next? After realizing the heroic nature of Mr. 3, Hancock, who was already very curious about this matter, became more interested. The rest of the old and new Shicibukai, Hawkeye, as the world's #1 swordsman, is a loner, and his strength is comparable to that of the 4 emperors. The possibility of successfully recruiting him is even slimmer than capturing the naval headquarters. The so-called Whitebeard's biological son, Wabel Newgate, although his brain is a bit abnormal and easy to fool, he is a brutal and moody monster, and the Miss Bajan around him is a mercenary person. The success rate of recruiting, or to be more precise, the danger of recruiting is quite high, and it belongs to the kind of time bomb. As for Crocodile, as the former boss of Mr. 3, with the arrogant nature of Sand Crocodile, it is even more whimsical to want him to bend under Mr. 3, even if Bucky the Clown comes. For the rest, Moonlight Mariah is too strong and has no power of his own. The Tyrant Bear who has been transformed into an immature person, and Doflamingo who is locked in the deep sea prison are not realistic. In this way, the easiest person to call under his command is Trafalgaro, the death surgeon who has only become a supernova in the Shichibukai in the last 2 years. In terms of the power of the pirates and the fruit ability, Trafalgaro is barely qualified. Will you recruit Qiwuhai next? Mr. 3 looked calm, looked up at Hancock, who was obviously curious but pretended to be casual and cold, smiled mysteriously, and asked, if it were you, which one would you choose? Although the current Hancock belongs to the Bucky Pirates, the status is slightly lower, but the opposite is the Pirate Queen. Mr. 3 does not dare to treat him as a superior or inferior. And as a small overlord in the New World, Hancock's suggestions are quite valuable. Hancock's beautiful brows frowned slightly. As an empress, she didn't like this feeling of being dominated, especially when the other party was a man. Displeased and unhappy, after a few seconds of silence, she still opened her mouth and asked, Supernova's Trafalgaro? Luo. Mr. 3 was surprised when he heard the name. In his intuitive impression, an arrogant and strong man like Hancock, the first time he thought of cooperating, should be those experienced and powerful veteran Qiwuhai. Trazi, this is really unexpected. In other words, even Mr. 3 himself has not considered Trafalgaro at all. With the god's perspective, he is very clear that the current Terazai is busy fighting with Mama Kaido in the country of Wano. How can there be extra time to sit down and listen to his nonsense? Ah no, listen to his reasonable recruitment invitation? Even if Luo has this leisurely interest, Mr. 3 will definitely not list him as the second recruit. This will go to the country of Wano, where the double 4 emperors and supernovas are fighting. Isn't Chun Chun joking with his precious life? Hancock soon saw the word impossible written without concealment from Mr. 3's expression. This made her, who was already very unhappy, surging up her temper. Click. A hole was stepped on the sturdy merchant ship deck. Hancock stepped forward and asked coldly, so, who is it? I said, don't be impulsive. Mr. 3, who wanted to sell off the skin, was taken aback, but he was about to put this idea of a euro death behind him. In the end, he is a ruthless character who can even kick the cute kittens and puppies on the roadside. Hancock's patience is really limited. After pondering for a few seconds, Mr. 3 slowly opened his mouth and told Hancock that he was going to recruit Qiwuhai next. The sea breeze was blowing head-on, just covering up Mr. 3's voice. Only Hancock, who was standing opposite, could hear it. Familiar names got into his ears, and even Hancock couldn't help showing a look of astonishment, looking at Mr. 3's eyes full of disbelief. This. Are you serious? Mr. 3 nodded lightly and affirmed. Whether it is his own strength and experience, or his influence and appeal, he is currently one of the characters most needed by the Bucky Pirates. What concubine cares about is not him, but how many little lives you have to lose. Hancock said what was on his mind with a serious look. Mr. 3 patted his chest and said calmly and confidently, "That's all." "Then I hope you don't die too miserably. Before I came to the Amazon Lily Kingdom, I hoped so too." "So it seems that you have a high degree of confidence in recruiting this person?" "If it's just me, the hope is slim, but with a strong person like you joining in, all problems will be solved." "Oh, concubine does not deny your words, just like concubine will not deny that you are a vulgar and disgusting flatterer." Hearing such a clear concept, Mr. 3 shrugged helplessly and speechlessly. "Then I have to thank you for agreeing with my words." "It's your honor." Hancock raised his head, as if it were a matter of course. When Mr. 3 saw this, he didn't say more, knowing the temper of this guy, and ended the topic with interest. "Speaking of which, Hancock, how long does it usually take from awakening to mastering the domineering arrogance?" He suddenly remembered the side objective that appeared after successfully recruiting Hancock. Sub-line goal: Hancock's transcendence, domineering and domineering completely surpass Hancock. Target reward: a book of advanced physical skills. Obviously, this goal will be impossible to achieve in a short time, but if it is achieved by luck, the physical skills will be greatly improved. It varies from person to person, and the specific time depends on the understanding. Of course, if someone guides you, this time will be greatly shortened. Hancock looked at Mr. 3, and there was a deep sense of superiority in his words. It took only a month for the concubine to go from awakening the overlord to being free, and the whole process is all on my own to explore and exercise. My concubine can understand your urgency to master the overlord's sex as soon as possible. As an ally, if you kneel down and beg you, it is not impossible for your concubine to give you guidance and special training. However, based on your qualifications, there are no 2-3 months is impossible." She thought she saw through the mind of Mr. 3 in front of her. This is not surprising. The tyrannical domineering can be said to be the most top-level, rarest, and highest limited ability in the world. No matter who awakens this power, they will eagerly want to master it. Cough, cough, cough. It is rare to see Hancock being so kind to others. Mr. 3 scratched his head in embarrassment. That is to say, thank you very much for your kindness, but to be honest, I seem to be able to control the overlord arrogance as I want." "What did you say?" Hancock, who looked reluctant 1 second ago, shrank his pupils the next second, and a look of horror appeared on his beautiful face. If it weren't for her not being the kind of funny character who is prone to sudden changes in her style of painting, her eyes would probably pop out. Mr. 3's reaction to Hancock was not surprising. He seemed to see the doubts in her eyes that she didn't believe in killing him. He closed his eyes slightly and looked for the insights he had gained from the 7 days of devil training with Rayleigh. Hum. A powerful aura condensed around Mr. 3, like a thunderstorm cloud before a storm, carrying a suffocating sense of oppression. When the domineering arrogance in the body accumulated to the extreme, Mr. 3 suddenly opened his eyes. Boom. The entire aura exploded instantly, turning into an overwhelming mental shock that swept all around. "Hancock, release the overlord, let me see the gap between you and me." In the center of the aura, Mr. 3's hair fluttered and his clothes were agitated, like a king standing in the world, challenging Hancock. Seeing that Mr. 3 actually mastered the release of the domineering in less than a day, Hancock bit his red lips and fell into a deep shock. A few seconds later, realizing that she was being provoked, she stepped out, with cold light flashing in the depths of her eyes. It's sizzling. At the moment when the two powerful auras contacted, the dark red thunder and lightning storm burst, intertwined, as if to completely tear the space here. This is the real collision of overlord colors. New World, Bucky the Clown Base Camp, Qiwuhai, Bali. The raging war lit up the entire island, and the sky was filled with flames, covering the darkness of the night. Thick smoke rose from all directions, and the continuous roar of artillery roared through the sea, and the heavy and violent shockwave blew up the whole island to tremble. Countless birds woke up in their sleep, fluttered their wings in panic, and fled to a safer distance. Of course, most of them became roasted birds under the scorching flames. The center of the blast, the Bund of Qiwuhai, Bali. Under the command of Lieutenant General Styles, countless elite sailors armed with sharp-edged guns jumped off the warship and launched the third round of charge so far. The ones strangled with them were undoubtedly the pirates of the Bucky Clown Pirates. Although the number is far less than the Navy, Most of them are vicious pirates who have followed Bucky since the advance of the city. Similar to the previous 2 charges, this time, the battle situation between the 2 sides who rushed together was still stalemate. Damn the clown Bucky, how many such powerful subordinates are there? On the offshore naval warship, Lieutenant Admiral Stellas, standing at the bow, was wearing a cloak of justice, holding the samurai sword at his waist with his right hand, and looked at the battle on the beach with a solemn expression. After several hesitations, as the commander-in-chief of the siege and arrest of the Bucky pirates, he summoned his adjutant and issued important orders. Be prepared to activate the SSG special weapon. After this charge, no matter what the result is, completely liberate it, and make sure to take down the clown Bucky hiding in the depths of the island before dawn. Hearing this, the young adjutant was stunned for a moment. Although what we brought this time is an incomplete model, which cannot be compared with the official version of Seraphim who encircled and suppressed the Pirate Queen, but Lieutenant General, the strategic significance of the SSG is extraordinary. In the normal plan, it is not used to deal with them. Is it the strongest captain, Bucky the Clown? Is it too early to put it into use at this time? In addition to being an adjutant, he is also the person who knows the SSG best in the entire warship, and is also the person who is most capable of driving this disabled SSG. Therefore, he didn't quite understand Lieutenant General Stierez's decision. The purpose of launching the charge is to weaken the overall combat capability of the clown Bucky pirates, and at the same time to let those naive recruits experience the cruelty of war. Stierles didn't look back, and said in a deep voice, "But the pirates under Bucky the Clown are a little more powerful than I expected. If we continue to fight like this, let alone weaken their combat power, even we have finally cultivated them. All recruits must be buried here. The island occupied by the pirates is not the destination of their young blood. In comparison, what is the incomplete SSG of the failed product?" The adjutant followed Stierez's gaze and saw that on the battlefield with bright artillery fire, medics dragged seriously injured newcomers back to the warship for emergency treatment all the time. The restless blood in his body kept urging him to join the battle and kill all those damn pirates. But reason is constantly restraining him. The SSG still needs to be activated by itself. The mission of the headquarters has not been completed, and we must maintain absolute calm. But what should we do when we face Bucky the Clown and his powerful cadres in the future? The adjutant asked worriedly. Don't worry. The old man's samurai sword was hidden in its sheath just for that time. How could a superior always be like a coward, hiding behind to watch the younger generation charge? At that time, the old man will also be dispatched. Stierez's answer was casual and succinct. But in the ear of the adjutant, it is full of extreme awareness and confidence. Ming, I understand, Lieutenant General. The adjutant didn't say any more, and after giving a military salute, he hurried back to the special headquarters dedicated to activating the SSG. It wasn't until his figure completely disappeared from the bow of the warship that Stierl's unyielding face showed a trace of worry and doubt. It's really weird. According to the absolute egoist style of Bucky the Clown, shouldn't the younger brothers pack up and run away in secret when they blocked the first charge? Why this time? It seems that you are determined to defend this Kalai Bali, and until now, you are still sitting in the base camp, and there is no sign of escaping at all? Stairs was puzzled. Because most of the members of Bucky the Clown are criminals who escaped from the advancing city, their identities are difficult to identify. Therefore, as early as when Bucky became Shicibukai, the Navy headquarters secretly dispatched spies to hide in his pirate group to wait for an opportunity. Although the spy's status is not high in the pirate group, it can also give a fatal blow to the clown Bucky at a critical moment. In this situation, as long as Bucky and his core cadres show any signs of leaving their younger brother to escape alone, the spy will immediately jump out to expose it, and disintegrate the crew's trust in Bucky the Clown from within. At the same time as the infighting is triggered, the Navy launches a full-scale attack and can easily take down Bucky the Clown. This is the whole plan of Stierles, and it has to be said that it is quite insidious and flawless, if there is no such thing as Mr. 3. It seems that the problem should all lie with Mr. 3 who sneaked out before. A faint unease appeared in Stierles's heart, and even he couldn't help but sigh softly. If I had known earlier, when the spies came in with information, they shouldn't have let Mr. 3 go in order not to scare the snakes, causing this uncontrollable variable. It turned out that Mr. 3's secret escape did not escape the monitoring of the Navy. In fact, this makes sense. After all, even Kebi, a novice, knows to completely block the Amazon Lily Island and not let anyone go. How could a vice admiral with rich combat experience not understand this truth? Although he knew that a mere Mr. 3 couldn't make any waves, but for some reason, the more he thought about Mr. 3, the more inexplicable uneasiness in Stierez's heart became. And this is one of the reasons why he decided to use SSG in advance. Need a quick fight. Take down Bucky the Clown as soon as possible. Soon, the Navy's third landing charge came to an end. They still failed to capture the offshore beach. Under the order of the rear officer, they could only retreat in dejection amid the cheers of the pirates. Ha ha ha. The Navy headquarters is just like that. Without Captain Bucky's hands, we are enough to beat them up. Incompetent guys, won't be scared to pee and run back to the warship to change diapers? Ha ha ha. Is this the ability of the Navy headquarters? Ah ha 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 ha. Pirates with weapons stood on the shore and shouted loudly. Deep in Kalai Bali, Bucky the Clown sits high up. After listening to the younger brother's report on the big advantages of the front line of the battlefield, this guy couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth, and suddenly felt that he could do it again. Well, tell the little ones, don't get carried away just because of a few small wins, if you really can't help it. Bucky suddenly activated his ability, and his torn arms and calves propped up the big red robe on his body huge. Then let's laugh as much as you want and let go. Because behind you, but there is me, this powerful monster who has fought against the red hair several times without being defeated, ha 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 ha. Sharp and piercing laughter echoed in the hall. Seeing this, the younger brothers below were gushing with enthusiasm, and their admiration flowed like seawater. Captain Bucky. You are our god. Bucky, Bucky, Bucky. This group of enthusiastic little fanboy pirates, it is estimated that they would never have thought of killing them. Captain Bucky, who is omnipotent in their eyes, has this inner monologue at this time. Hey, hey hey, I didn't expect these guys to be so strong. If you just pick one out, it's probably going to blow me out of the nose, right? Simply lucky. Behind Bucky's gigantic figure, Arita, Mochi, Kabaji and Lion Niiki shrank in the corner, and their faces were all filled with sorrow in high synchronization. Hey, is there really no problem going on like this? Why'd I feel so unreliable? Alrita whispered. The same feeling, my eyelids keep twitching, as if something bad is about to happen. The animal trainer Mo Chigui spoke timidly. Wong Wong. The lion niche next to him whispered twice in approval. Cabbage, the unicycle acrobat, reprimanded angrily. Don't talk nonsense, your crow's mouth has never been ineffective since then. Before the words were finished, members of the pirates came hurriedly outside the hall, and their vicious faces were full of panic. It's not good. Captain Bucky is in a bad situation. The Navy, a terrifying monster suddenly jumped down from the Navy warship. The front line, the brothers on the front line only persisted for dozens of seconds, and the whole army was wiped out. Hearing this, Bucky, who was lost in the embrace of his younger brothers, still had a proud face. The whole army is wiped out. Those guys are quite capable, so quickly all the sea soldiers, all. Kill. Kill and so on. Wait. After carefully pondering the report of his subordinates, Bucky, who finally reacted, was so shocked that he couldn't say anything. What did you say? Then, those powerful guys, Jujuju was killed in seconds. Even if it is only a broken model, with the addition of the Navy's secret weapon SSG, the battle situation in Kale Bali has taken a turn for the worse. The Marines quickly occupied the Bund and moved steadily towards the hinterland where Bucky was. The situation is critical, hidden in the Bucky pirates, and even Lieutenant General Stellas is afraid of the powerhouses who need to use alienation tactics to counterattack. They can no longer sit still and show up to join the battle. However, even this group of brutal pirates with an average bounty of over a million were helpless against the big killer SSG. They could only slow down the advance of the Navy and limit it to the forest area deep in the Bund. In response, and in order to speed up the defeat of Bucky the Clown, in the Navy, the colonel-level elites came out in full force to fight with the pirate powerhouses. With the assistance of SSG weapons, they took a considerable advantage and slowly advanced towards Bucky's base camp at a speed of several meters per minute. So far, in addition to the captain of the general, all the high-level fighting forces of both sides have been dispatched to push the offensive and defensive battle between the Clown Bucky pirates and the fleet of the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters to a stage that is enough to determine the battle situation. A fierce battle broke out between Qiwuhai Bali, and in an unknown sea area, a certain candle fruit person was still on his way by boat. It's really strange, obviously they are all overlords, why is the gap so big? Mr. 3 was lying on the big soft bed, staring at the bright moon hanging high in the night sky outside the window, puzzled. He was very excited when the dark red lightning burst out from the collision with the Hancock overlord. This is definitely a scene that countless Jaime have dreamed of. Although Mr. 3 knew that he would challenge Hancock's domineering arrogance that he had cultivated for an unknown number of years, he would undoubtedly fail miserably, but he couldn't think of anything. He couldn't even hold on for 3 seconds, and was suppressed by Hancock's momentum to the point that he couldn't move, and fell to the ground softly like a slug. After a long delay, he barely had the strength to stand up and slip back into the room. That is, from this time, Mr. 3 realized that Hancock didn't really use the suppressing effect of the domineering when he was in the Palace of Nine Snakes. Maybe Hancock at that time didn't even see him before the awakening of the tyrannical arrogance. Of course, the main reason for Hancock to go all out this time is because Mr. 3 took only half a day to master the Overlord color, which deeply stimulated her arrogance and publicity, and eagerly wanted to use her overwhelming strength. Come and prove yourself. What pirate queen, after all, it's still a child's temper. Recalling the sneering smile on Hancock's mouth that quietly rose when he left, Mr. 3 gritted his teeth with hatred. He was just bullying me, who was in the novice stage. Glancing back. After thinking about it, he added in his heart, I have to give you a middle finger again. Well, even he didn't realize that this kind of secretly memorizing a small notebook doesn't seem to be mature. In the midst of this indignation, Mr. 3 fell into a deep sleep and fell asleep. The gentle waves pushed and shoved 2 merchant ships, one large and one small, and the slight swaying felt like lying in a comfortable cradle as a child, which greatly increased sleepiness. The gusts of sea wind blowing on the wide sails turned into natural power, pushing the merchant ships towards Qiwuhai Bali. Before they knew it, they had already left the windless waters. Perhaps the pirates active in the nearby area received the wind, and until the second half of the night, there were no more vicious emergencies similar to the previous robbery of Jared with the machete. Time passed quietly in this rare quiet night. When the darkness of the night gradually fades away, the light like the burning of stars and flames lights up from the end of the sea in the sky, which also announces the arrival of a new day. Third brother, the outline of Blakesing Island can already be seen in front of you. Do you want to get up first? Mr. 3, who was immersed in the dream of punching the general and kicking the 4 emperors, was awakened by a gentle knock on the door. Has it arrived yet? The hazy consciousness just showed signs of awakening, only to hear a loud bang, and the door of the room was violently kicked open by a slender leg. Hancock, who had already put on a combat cheongsam, grabbed the little brother who was in charge of the notification, and threw him out of the cabin. Mr. 3, the blazing island you mentioned is just ahead. I need you to go to the island with us to check the environment. If there is no problem, just take a short rest, and we should go to the clown Bucky. She walked into the room without changing her face, stood at the head of Mr. 3's bed and started talking about business. I'm not good at fighting as a wife, so after the inspection, I'll stay on the island to deal with the tedious things related to the settlement of the residents. Granny Zaw, who was holding a snake cane, followed closely and sat on a stool as if nothing had happened. Me, Marigold, and the fighting members of the 9 snake pirates will naturally follow my sister and go to Qiwuhai Bali with you, the third brother. The snake men sisters Sandasonia and Marigold also walked in, and behind them, there were a group of female warriors from the 9 snake pirates. This directly stunned Mr. 3. Good guy. Looking at this situation, it is directly regarded as a conference room, right? You really don't treat me like an outsider at all. Looking at the crowd of women who filled the room in the blink of an eye, staring at him, Mr. 3 suddenly ejected and sat up in shock. No matter how hazy sleepiness was dispelled in this instant. Well, I understand the truth, so, can you let me get dressed first? If it weren't for the fear that the burning hairstyle would burn down the whole bed when using the ability, Mr. 3 really wanted to make a hole for himself with candles. It's really embarrassing to open the door for his son, embarrassing home. In fact, he couldn't blame him for being snooze. In addition to the whole day of sailing, sneaking into the daughter's island, and recruiting the Empress, he also trained the devil for 7 days and 7 nights in Mr. Rayleigh's domineering lecture hall. Although when you are awake, you can be full of energy like a normal person, but if you really fall asleep, the overwhelming tiredness will sweep in unconsciously, engulfing people's spirits. €1 from visiting the island, arranging personnel, comforting the people, and then returning to the merchant ship and sailing to Qiwuhai, Bali, Mr. 3 did not waste much time. Or to be more precise, he deliberately simplified all the original planning processes. Because in the middle, he received a secret contact from the clown Bucky's exclusive phone bug. The message from the other side was quite brief, with only 4 words: 3. Danger. Quick help. Then, the phone was engulfed by the roar of a violent explosion. The situation on Bucky's side seems to be a bit unstoppable. Mr. 3 was quite anxious. He didn't want to see a Bucky pirate group in ruins after he had worked so hard to recruit Hancock. Just when Mr. 3 and the original 9 snake pirates arrived quickly by boat, Qiwuhai, Bali was here. After a night of artillery bombardment, the island, which should have been beautiful and green, was in a state of semi-ruin. Smoke billows from the beach, the reefs and rock walls are fragmented, the coastal forest is full of fire, and countless towering giant trees fall to the ground. The devastation after the fierce battle can be seen everywhere. In the deepest part of the forest, the base camp where Bucky the Clown was located was surrounded by the Navy headed by Lieutenant General Steers, and there was no escape. Bucky, you are at the end of the road, so hurry up and surrender. With 2 bloodstains on his face, Steers looked serious and shouted to Bucky in the base camp. The strength of the elite pirates of the Clown Bucky Pirates once again exceeded his expectations. They not only miraculously defeated the incomplete SSG miraculously, but also left scars on him who joined the battlefield later. Although unbelievable, the situation is not out of his control. Their elite forces are well preserved, but the Clown Bucky Pirates have run out of fuel, leaving only Bucky, a few cadres of average strength, and a group of wounded who are incapacitated. Inside the base camp, Bucky stood tall and straight on the large balcony of the hall, facing Steers from afar. Beside him are several veteran cadres such as Arita and Kabaji who are carrying mace. You're going to die, brothers. What are we going to do next? Now that we're surrounded by Navy, there's no chance to get away. Listening to the Vice Admiral's voice over the air, Bucky's face did not change, and he was completely ignorant of the opponent. It's just that everyone didn't notice that his tiny eyeballs were turning quietly, communicating with the cadres around him through his eyes. Rita. What else can I do? Just go on and fight with them. Animal Trainer Moki. Hey, are you serious? Opposite is the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters and hundreds of elite sailors, just a few of us parallel imports? Cabbage. Didn't you send support orders to the various mercenary group branches a few hours ago? Why haven't you seen them yet? Bucky. There's no chance. That guy Steerth already guessed it. They're being pursued by naval branches from all over the world, and they can't get away. Moki. So, our only hope at the moment is, only the 3rd brother left? Arita. Don't have superfluous illusions, Mr. 3 has been unable to contact since just now, let's join us. Bucky. Damn, if it wasn't for the damn Navy who blocked the signal on the island earlier, how could we just say a word? Cabbage. Wait, Bucky, Portino, shouldn't he leave us alone and run for his life? Thinking of the true meaning of Mr. 3 who did not hesitate to sneak into the interior at the top of the war, hid beside Sengoku Garp, and bet his own life to help Straw Hat Luffy and Fire Fist Ace out of trouble, Bucky's eyes shook violently. Impossible. 3 Although that guy is an insidious and cunning coward who is greedy for life and fear of death, he still has benevolence and righteousness towards his partners. Compared to the doomsday horror lineup on the top of the war, the Navy on Qiwuhai, Bali is simply not worth mentioning. Seeing this, other cadres also dismissed the idea of a euro Mr. 3 running away. It's just a look from the lion niche, and it elevates everyone's worries to the extreme. Normally, the 3rd brother would not abandon us just because he was greedy for life and fear of death, but this time he went to Daughter Island, which is full of beautiful women all over the country. The relieved Arita, Mochi, and Cabbage's pupils shrank suddenly. Fuck. All women. Even Bucky, who was very confident in Mr. 3, was completely panicked at this moment. 3 confused 3. In the distance, Steers saw that Bucky and his group were just standing on the balcony and posing quietly, with no intention of surrendering at all, and immediately shouted loudly, Bucky. I will treat you leniently based on the love of the original Qiwuhai. So, I will persuade you one last time, give up useless resistance, and surrender immediately. As soon as these words came out, Bucky, who was panicking, was directly annoyed. Seeing his ruthless expression, he yelled at Stella's, "Fuck your motherfucker. I believe Sakaski's pirate grave is 2 meters tall. If you want to fight, you can fight. In this way, this uncle will let you know what is the terrifying combat power that is enough to rival the red hair of the 4 emperors." The words were full of momentum, and the clown's makeup added a bit of inexplicable ferocity and brutality to him. Of course, if someone jumped out and took away the big red robe on Bucky's body at this time, everyone present would be able to see his trembling body parts hidden under the clothes. Captain Bucky, is this legendary pirate who came out of the One Piece ship finally serious? Oh. Captain Bucky, hurry up and kill those arrogant guys. Let the whole world see your unfathomable combat power. Brother, help me open the eyelids that were cut in the battle. I don't want to miss the heroic figure of Captain Bucky. A euro in the base camp, the disabled subordinates who had been silent for a long time suddenly stood up and shouted as if they had been beaten with blood. In contrast, the Navy seemed a little panicked. The recruits with lower qualifications were shocked by Bucky's arrogant momentum and took a few steps back. It's no wonder that their courage is shallow, mainly because of the many names behind the clown Bucky, which is too terrifying. Don't be frightened by that guy's bravado. No matter how dazzling his halo is, in the current situation, we still have the absolute upper hand. With a loud shout, Stearth dispelled the retreating intentions that had sprung up in the hearts of many of his subordinates. After saying that, he didn't want to drag on any longer, his tone was cold. He slowly pulled out the samurai sword from his waist, and looked at Bucky in the distance with killing intent in his eyes. Bucky, I think you really want to be buried here, since that's the case. Everyone obeyed the order and immediately launched the final siege against Bucky the Clown and his remnants, regardless of life or death. When the sea soldiers saw the cloak of justice instigated by the lieutenant general standing at the forefront, the gushing blood immediately dispelled their fear, and they showed their weapons one after another. Yes. Lieutenant General. Seeing that the name on his body couldn't hold back the group of sailors in front of him, the fierce look on Bucky's face couldn't hold back any longer. Huh. It's over, it's over, it's over, it's going to die, it's going to die. Due to excessive tension and panic, one foot slipped and he fell directly towards the fence of the balcony. When the younger brothers saw this, they immediately saw gold stars, and the admiration value was directly filled. Oh. As expected of Captain Bucky, he actually wants to fight the entire Navy with one person. Bucky's inner monologue in a state of free fall. Fighting against you, a fucking hammer. No matter who it is, come and save me, I don't want to die yet. At the same time Bucky stumbled and fell, a terrified sailor stumbled over outside the naval encirclement. No, Lieutenant General, behind, the direction of the beach, the direction of the beach. Before he could finish speaking, an extremely terrifying and fierce aura suddenly burst. It swept in with a destructive mental shock, like an invisible mountain falling from the top of the head, pressing heavily on the sea soldier who was in charge of the notification. Thump. From the exclusive BGM for Red Hair. The young sailor's eyes turned white a little bit, and he lay down on the ground trembling all over, foaming at the mouth. Plop, plop, plop. Immediately after that, the slightly weaker seamen's heartbeats increased sharply, and they fainted and fell to the ground under invisible oppression, losing their ability to fight. The sudden scene directly stunned the younger brothers in the hall. Okay. What a terrifying strength. Is this the strength of a man on a par with the red hair of the 4 emperors? He killed more than half of the enemy at the moment of the shot. This is that man. Hey, don't get excited. It's only natural that the man we fancy has the qualifications of a king. Bucky, who had the onion on the ground, heard the overwhelming cheers and immediately pulled his head out of the ground. Then, he saw the sailor lying on the ground in front of him. Aha. Damn sea soldier, have you seen it? This is your true strength, Uncle Bucky. The arrogant look that was so proud of being deformed instantly appeared on his face. Although what he wanted to say most at this time was, although I don't know what happened, I was saved anyway. This is a euro. The soul-stirring domineering made Stearth's heart skip a beat. Bucky. No, it came from behind. He turned around abruptly, and his calm eyes were immediately replaced by deep shock and panic. Follow his slightly trembling eyes. I saw a group of black figures stepping on the flames, walking slowly and indifferently, in the depths of the forest ignited by the flames behind the lying sea soldiers. The person at the head is the person with the power of wax fruit who sneaked out earlier, Mr. 3. A little bit of cold sweat appeared on Stella's forehead. You can't be wrong, it was definitely a tyrannical domineering just now. Why, that bastard Mr. 3 has such a terrifying power. Moreover, standing behind him is actually, under the increasingly horrified gaze of Steerth, Mr. 3, who was walking slowly, finally came here. Why do you want to ask slowly? Nonsense. Running so fast, how can you show off your awakened overlord? How can you pretend to be forceful? Raising his hand to support the goggles, Mr. 3 and Stellas looked at each other with a smile on the corners of their mouths. Lord Lieutenant General, you should have done nothing to my captain, right? Steerth clenched the katana in his hands, his breath blooming, and he covered it with a lacquered black armament in advance. If the sudden appearance of Mr. 3 made him tense and face a great enemy, the beauty standing behind Mr. 3 with her arms folded in her arms made him feel a trace of coldness and despair from the bottom of his heart. Why, the pirate queen Boyahan Cook, who was supposed to be surrounded and suppressed by Kebi, and the entire 9 snake pirates, would appear in this place. The shock in Steerth's heart was beyond words, and his eyes rolled, falling on the subordinates beside him who were barely able to withstand the impact of the overlord. Although I can't understand why Hancock came here, there is no doubt that she is on the side of the clown Bucky pirates. Recognizing the reality, Steerth was not confident enough to be able to fight against 2 Kibu pirates at the same time, so he began to think about the next retreat and what to do to keep the lives of his subordinates safe. Completely different from Steerless, who was waiting for him, and a group of stunned seamen, the Bucky the clown pirates are here. After recognizing Mr. 3, the younger brothers showed excitement and joy, and laughed extremely wanton and arrogant. Third brother? Third brother, it is third brother. The third brother is back, the third brother is back with a group of girls. Damn. Don't you shout so loudly. Look carefully, who is the one standing behind the third brother? Ah. See, Pirate Empress, Boyahan Cook. Fuck. It turns out that the purpose of the third brother's secret trip was to find the 9 Snake Pirates Alliance? Third brother. I'm sorry for you. Just now, I was swearing in my heart that you were a waste who escaped. I misunderstood you, third brother. It turns out that it's not that man, but a man. The third brother is mighty. A euro in front of the successive cheers, Alrita and the others who were standing on the edge of the balcony were also shocked. They couldn't believe that Mr. 3 really drew the 9 snake pirates over. The key is that he didn't sink into the endless beauty, and he still thought about their old buddies. 3 This guy is really capable, our little lives are finally saved. The animal trainer Mo Chi heaved a sigh of relief. Hancock, the captain of the 9 snake pirates, is a real and powerful monster with unfathomable strength, and he is not at the same level as their captain Bucky. With her and the 9 snakes pirates joining in, it is a sure thing to defeat Steers and relieve the crisis of Kalai Bali. Aha, as expected of the third brother, I said that it would be no problem to hand it over to a man like him. Cabbage, the unicycle acrobat, wiped the cold sweat from his forehead with relief, and was thankful that he had managed to get through. I didn't expect that he actually found the pirate queen, and Arita silently took down the mace on her shoulders. In addition to being surprised, she looked at Mr. 3 with a strange look in her eyes. Is it my illusion? Why does this guy 3 look so pleasing to the eye? That's not the point. Bucky, who stumbled and fell below, stood on both feet, and his body was separated by the ability to split the fruit, and floated back to the balcony again. His eyes skipped Mr. 3, fell on Hancock beside him, and said with a serious expression, the point is, the overlord color just now is not from this guy 3, but Bo Yahan who has 3 colors domineering. Cook. He especially emphasized the 3 words Hancock, as if in this way, he can make himself more firm about the basic fact that Mr. 3 will not be king. He is not envious of other people's awakening overlord, and even sends the most sincere blessings to them. But as a comrade who suffers and suffers together, Bucky doesn't want to see Mr. 3, Cabbage and these old buddies have the overlord color in the bottom of his heart. It's not that I'm worried that they will surpass me when they become stronger, but I simply don't want to see a good brother who can pretend to be more powerful than me. Thinking of this, Bucky's clown's expression suddenly became artistic. Please 3, no matter who it is, it must not be you. Other losing friends also hold the same idea. Isn't this inevitable? If the third brother awakens the overlord, I will swallow the car on the spot. Cabbage raised his finger and pointed to his unicycle with a firm tone. Arita raised her mace and agreed. I nod on this mace, the kind that has no mace left. After that, the two turned to look at the bewildered animal trainer Mochi. Mochi, who was wearing a white coat, looked left and right, and finally set his cruel eyes on Liji the lion. Then me, then I will swallow Liji. Hearing this, the lion's hair stood on end, and his cute eyes stared round. Jealousy has made this gang unrecognizable. In fact, it's no wonder that they reacted so violently. It's true that Mr. Three's sinister and timid image is deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. It's not surprising that someone like him awakens the devil fruit, and it's not surprising that his strength has grown by leaps and bounds, but it's not surprising that he is an overlord. It's more exaggerated and dreamy than Bucky being the pirate king. Of course, Bucky, who is targeting One Piece, doesn't think so. In the distance, Mr. Three, who led the soldiers of the 9 snake pirates to face off against Steers, was still immersed in a wave of coolness after he finished pretending. Cheat to drink, delusional iron supplementation. Boya Hancock, why are you here? What about Kirby and the other sailors? Holding a katana sword, Stellas looked nervous and shouted at Hancock behind Mr. Three. Naturally, he focused more on Hancock. Compared with the Pirate Queen who exudes a dangerous atmosphere, Mr. Three's threat to them can almost be ignored. And what is about to happen next will completely change the view of this well-informed Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters. Hancock brushed away the hair hanging on his side face. His body was tall and straight, his expression was arrogant, and he said arrogantly, "Who do you think you are? Kneel down and kowtow, and I can consider answering your question." You. Steeres's face was ashen, but he was afraid of Hancock's strength and did not dare to act rashly. On the other hand, the elite Marines under their command couldn't see that their lieutenant general was being so insulted, so they stood up and pointed at Hancock and shouted, "Damn pirates! How did you talk to the lieutenant general? Damn! Don't mess with that horrible woman." Although Steeres stopped quickly, he still couldn't change the fate of the sad reminder of the sea soldiers. Hancock was just a glance, and the elite Marines who would be maintained by the outspoken gang turned into stone statues in an instant. Compared with the time of the Top War, after 2 years of training, Hancock's development of fruit ability is naturally more refined. Like this weak person who is not strong and courageous, he can be petrified without light. Boya Hancock. Styles was furious. Faced with the current crisis situation of being attacked by the Bucky Clown Pirates and the 9 Snake Pirates, he made a decisive decision and issued the final order to the conscious men beside him. "Everyone who can still move, listen to me. The old man will open a path for you. No matter what happens next, you just run forward. The farther the better, the faster the better. This is a death order." With determination to die in Stella's eyes, the violent sound was like thunder, which awakened the sluggish sailors. The cloak of justice that keeps flying behind him gives him infinite courage and strength. In order to allow the young shoots behind him to thrive, Steerth decided to risk his own life and take the initiative to attack Mr. Three and the 9 Snake Pirates with a fierce and ferocious offensive. Hancock's eyes turned cold and he took a step forward. However, he was stopped by Mr. Three, whose right arm was constantly spewing fluid candles. "Let me come, just to try the limit of this trick." Mr. Three looked at the galloping Vice Admiral. His eyes hidden under the goggles were steady and calm, but his whole body's blood boiled and agitated as Steers approached. I saw the thick and sticky candles surging and compressing layer by layer, then expanding and getting bigger, making a strange sound of gurgling. Among them, a large number of miniature gunpowders of the same material as the clown Bikimachi are naturally mixed. When the internal pressure of the single fluid candle reached its limit, the giant candle fist on Mr. Three's right arm had swelled to twice the size of his body, like a giant's fist. After the fruit ability accuracy and 3-color domineering have been slightly enhanced, it is only natural that the destructive power of the Candly Big Fire he developed by himself will definitely be more terrifying than when it was used in 9 Snake City. "Don't overthink, Mr. Three. My goal is not you." Steerless clenched the dark katana in both hands, and his blue veins burst into a frantic charge, wanting to kill Mr. Three, who stood up in an instant. According to the intelligence analysis of the officers of the Bucky Pirates, he is absolutely sure that he can do this kind of thing. Then let's try it. Mr. 3 didn't change his face, he tilted his head slightly to the right, and let the figure 3 flame above his head ignite the giant candle fist. Boom. With bursts of dull and depressing explosions, the white candle giant fist was instantly ignited, turning into a beast of flames that would devour everything. What? This move. Stellas felt a chill in his heart, and the absolute confidence that pervaded his face immediately collapsed and ceased to exist. The widened eyes were unbelievable, because at this time, the figure that appeared in front of him actually overlapped with Marshal Sakaski. However, Mr. 3 didn't intend to give him time to react, so he jumped into the air, raised his flaming fist and slammed it in the face. Candly big fire. Candly big fire. The fluid candle with the maximum intensity and density enhanced with Mr. 3's fist, burst out with extremely strong force. Under the package of this special candle, the micro-dynamite mixed in it is ignited as much as possible, and the interaction between the candle and the gunpowder causes the explosive power to increase exponentially. When the destructive power in it is accumulated to the limit, and when the outside of the fluid candle is completely unable to restrain it, the terrifying shockwave will blast. Boom. A deafening roar resounded for 100 meters, and the destructive power contained in the depths of the giant candle fist was exerted on Stearth, whose complexion changed drastically. He didn't put Mr. 3 in his eyes at first. At this time, he had lost the opportunity to fight and avoided the gap, and could only watch the flame candle giant fist rapidly enlarge in his field of vision. Don't enter and cut. After all, it was the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters with rich combat experience. After realizing that he couldn't dodge the attack, Stellas immediately held the samurai sword with his backhand, and he poured his weapon into the blade without reservation, and swung his strongest slash. It's sizzling. The dark yellow slash slammed up against the explosive shock wave of the candle giant fist. The power of the two sides collided with each other. The center of the collision kept roaring, and the air ripples spread in all directions. Mr. 3, who had seized the opportunity, was unwilling to give Stearth a chance to breathe. His whole body was concentrated in his right arm and gathered in front of the fist. The accuracy of his fruit ability was completely liberated, and he devoured the slashes with a wild and arrogant attitude. Boom. The candle giant fist was like a broken bamboo, like a giant hammer hammering at Stearth. The aftermath of its impact directly overturned and tore the ground beneath Stearth's feet. The dense candle water rushed towards him and dripped onto Stearth's face, causing bursts of fiery burning. Stearth broke the boat, twisted his arm under great pressure, and slashed again with great difficulty. This time, in the face of the still fierce slash, Mr. 3's candle giant fist seemed a little stretched. This is an unavoidable defect of Candlefire Spitfire. Its power mainly comes from the ultra-high temperature released by the burning of the candle and the blasting impact of micro-explosives, and these two things with the highest lethality are precisely the things that Mr. 3 cannot master at present. After the first wave of offensive, whether the temperature or blasting, its power will be greatly weakened. More importantly, Mr. 3 can't continue to use the ability to replenish the liquid candle. One is that the power is no longer strong, and the other is that his right arm, which is not strong enough in the armed color, will be abolished in the follow-up damage. In the end, the sharp slash cut the candle giant fist apart a second before the energy dissipated, successfully resisting Mr. 3's strongest move. Whizzing. The flaming fluid candles were separated from left to right and landed on the open space on both sides of Stellas, like two flaming passages leading to hell, hideous and terrifying. Shave. At the moment when the candle giant fist was cut, Stearth, who had raised his 3 points of spirit, no longer underestimated the enemy. His feet swayed at high speed, and he came to the back of Mr. at an almost instantaneous speed. A cold light flashed, and the sharp blade slashed at Mr. 3's defenseless back at a sharp angle. Although Mr. 3 couldn't see the opponent's movement trajectory, fortunately, the sense of sight has improved from the new stage to the ordinary level, and he captured the attack from behind at the critical moment. Candle wall. His ankles moved slightly, and the gray-white fluid candles surged, solidifying behind his body, forming a solid wall of candles. Clang. The moment the candle wall was formed, Stearth's samurai sword just slashed down, and the two sides collided and made a harsh steel friction sound. The hardness of this candle is comparable to that of steel? Looking at the pitch-black blade that only cut into the candle wall more than 10 centimeters, Steers was secretly shocked. Just as he was about to take out his samurai sword and start attacking again, unexpectedly, the solid candle, which was as hard as iron a second ago, quickly melted away and returned to a viscous liquid state. This liquid candle is like a living thing, tightly wrapping the blade of the samurai sword, and spreading along the blade toward the sword-wielding Steers. Crescent moon feet. Steers responded very quickly, raising his foot and using the enhanced version of the Navy's sixth form. Sizzle. The crescent-shaped kick landed on the liquid candle precisely and without error. Although the candle could not be completely peeled off, Steers skillfully used the resulting reaction force to escape from the shackles of the candle wall together with the man and the knife. After pulling the distance, the muscles of the arm that Steers was holding tightly to the jet-black samurai sword bulged, and the blue veins burst out. He twisted his wrist to accumulate strength, and controlled the samurai sword to rotate clockwise and slash out. The tsunami roars. The dense dark yellow blade light was superimposed like waves and ocean waves, turning into a barrel-shaped slash with amazing lethality and rushing towards Mr. 3. Mr. 3 raised his left arm high, activated the wax fruit ability, made a huge solid candle boxing glove to cover his left fist, and slashed into the barrel with fearless hammer. Puff puff puff. After all, he is a lieutenant general of the Navy headquarters, and the slashing power of Steerless's full force is quite terrifying. Just the ordinary candle gloves can't resist at all, and they are cut into countless pieces of candles and scattered on the ground. Mr. 3's expression was serious and he didn't dare to take it lightly. A large number of candles poured out of his arms, and he blocked and retreated. Finally, after retreating more than 10 meters, he reluctantly offset the cylindrical slash from Stella's. As I expected, this guy's candle is as solid as steel and soft as clay, but he can't do anything about the strangling state's continuous slashing. Seeing that the attack was effective, Steerless, who successfully found the weakness of the wax fruit's ability, took advantage of the victory to pursue the attack, used a few moon steps to rise to the air, and swung a second cylindrical slash at Mr. 3 condescendingly. Mr. 3 didn't dare to be careless, his fists condensed into huge candle gloves to resist slashing, and after weakening its power, he ran quickly on the ground to avoid damage. Whoosh whoosh. The cylindrical slash was chasing Mr. 3 like a maggot attached to the bone. Wherever he went, the candle powder that was chopped into pieces flew and fell all over the place. In the blink of an eye, the ground under Mr. 3's feet was already covered with a thick layer of candle debris. After so many rounds, the exhausted Mr. 3 was finally forced to avoid it. Candle wall. In desperation, Mr. 3 could only turn around suddenly, put his hands on the ground, and summon a candle wall to try to block the cylindrical slash. It's now. You're dead, Mr. 3. At the same time, Steers, who was waiting for an opportunity in midair, burst out suddenly and dived down at an extremely fast speed. At the moment when he was about to hit the candle wall, he disappeared with a strange movement and flashed behind Mr. 3, who was struggling to maintain the candle wall. Relying too much on the ability of the fruit, this is the biggest flaw in your burial here. A wicked look flashed in Steerth's eyes, and he raised his samurai sword and slashed at Mr. 3's exposed neck. Is that so? Are you sure you don't underestimate my fruit ability? The corner of Mr. 3's mouth was slightly raised, not panicking at all. With his back to the Styles katana, he didn't even turn his head. The chilling voice pierced into his ears with an endless chill, and when the blade was about to cut off Mr. 3's head, Steers was horrified to discover. I can't move myself. Slowly bowing his head, Steerth's pupils shrank suddenly, exuding a strong look of panic. I didn't know when. The candle shavings that were cut into pieces by the cylindrical slash and fell on the ground had re-agglomerated, forming a candle lake with a diameter of tens of meters. And he who rashly broke into this candle field, at this time, was covered by a solid candle that was hard to break free like a steel shackle, and it was difficult to move. This damn Mr. 3. It turned out that from the very beginning, he was pretending to be defeated, using the appearance of fleeing and evading to covertly, and then deliberately revealed flaws to lead me into the game. It's so damn insidious. After completely blocking Streth's actions, Mr. 3 did not rush to attack, but lowered his head slightly, sensing the candle lake under his feet that was as flexible as his own hands and feet. Although it was just on a whim, I really didn't expect that even this kind of thing could be done. Mr. 3 secretly sighed in his heart. When the City of Nine Snakes used his ability to transfer the residents, he tried to spread the fluid candle in all directions with himself as the center. At that time, the limit of fluid candle coverage was about 50 meters, but whether it was the ability to control the candle or the solid-liquid conversion ability, it was lacking, and it consumed a lot of mental power. And after the three-color domineering, especially the knowledge color domineering, has been strengthened and advanced, this defect will be solved. In fact, even the original owner, Mr. 3, can spread the fluid candle formation field in all directions. However, its precision, strength, and speed for candles are much different from the fields that the current traverser Mr. 3 is using. Even fundamentally speaking, these two fields are not at the same level. Perhaps, in the field of candles, there is really a feasibility for development and research. Mr. 3's thoughts were flying, and all kinds of inspiration flashed from the depths of his mind. He turned around slowly and looked at Steerless, who was trying his best to break free the solid candle. Then, let the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters test the power of this move. Steerless felt a hint of gloom in his ardent and fiery eyes, and a bad premonition suddenly surfaced in his heart, forcing him to work even harder to break free from the shackles of the solid candle. On the other side, in the base camp hall where Bucky and a group of cadres are located. After watching Mr. 3 for a few rounds, the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters was restrained, and everyone stared blankly in place, their mouths wide open, and their faces were full of shock. Third brother usually doesn't make a lot of shots. I thought he was an elegant mind, but I didn't expect him to be so strong. You fart. Playing the mighty Vice Admiral in the palm of your hand the whole way, isn't this a savvy or what? Which wise man have you ever seen, capable of wielding that terrifyingly destructive fiery fire fist? Don't fight. In short, the three brothers are bullish. Popping sound. The younger brothers raised their weapons and cheered the name of Mr. 3. And Mr. 3's amazing performance also successfully dispelled the suspicions that had existed since they joined the Bucky Pirates. Captain Bucky, does he really have the formidable combat power to match his luxurious names? The result is obvious. Even a strong man like the third brother, who has both strength and brains, is willing to follow in the footsteps of Bucky. Captain Bucky must be as strong as a monster. In an instant, their admiration for Bucky the Clown became more pure and fanatical. Mr. 3, who was thinking about the application in the field of candles, never imagined that he was the one who beat people, forced to pretend to be him, but inexplicably the limelight of the strong fell on the head of the guy who paddled all the way. Compared to the ignorant younger brothers, Bucky, Arita, and others who knew Mr. 3 thoroughly had a completely stunned expression. Bucky blinked his eyes, which had become cute, took a breath, sucked back the snot that was so shocked that it was about to flow into his mouth, and was the first to break the silence. Ah. Who is that person who is fighting against Lieutenant General Steerless? Why does he look so unfamiliar? The animal trainer Mo Chi stretched out his chubby palms and rubbed his eyes hard, and murmured. It looks a bit like Mr. 3, not sure, let's see. Cabbage, who had been riding on a unicycle for some time, shook his head, and immediately denied his idea. This man looks so handsome, and he fought back and forth with the Lieutenant General, he must not be Mr. 3. Arita, who carried a heavy mace on her shoulders, puffed out her cheeks slightly and complained. I told you a long time ago that it's fine to go straight. Even Mr. 3 can beat the Lieutenant General. Can't we do it? Bucky immediately cast a contemptuous look. It makes sense, then you have time to end now. Yalita nodded. Mei Mu was firm and serious, and said solemnly, a dignified duel between men should not be disturbed by other people. Huh. Bucky, Kabaji, Mochi, and Niche all gave her their middle fingers in unison. Directly opposite, Hancock, who was in the state of watching the play the whole time, was also shocked. In her opinion, although Mr. 3's strength is very strong and has great potential, what is more terrifying is his unfathomable mind. At this stage, it is actually very difficult for him to defeat the veteran Lieutenant General with rich combat experience. However, the strong performance of Mr. 3 is not really unacceptable. After all, after awakening the Overlord, the comprehensive combat power of the awakened person will be improved to a certain extent. Marigorod, when Mr. 3 was fighting against us, he didn't seem to have such a strong suppression force, right? The green-haired Sandasonia was quite surprised. Marigold, who was standing beside him, nodded. I think so too, The power of the huge candle fire fist just now is much stronger than what we can resist. Could it be that he has left the fight with us? Both of them had doubts on their faces. Hancock raised his beautiful eyes and glanced at it, and said slowly, his fruit ability can be more powerful in open areas. Of course, Mr. 3, who has awakened the tyrannical color, has indeed become stronger. Speaking of this, a hint of unwillingness appeared on Hancock's beautiful face. Damn Mr. 3, how did he manage to control the overlord color in half a day? I see. The two snake sisters suddenly realized, and nodded again and again. When they set their eyes on Mr. 3 in the distance, Mr. 3, who had been silent for a long time, finally made the next move. Candle Iron Fist. Mr. 3 raised his right arm, and a gray-white fluid candle oozes out of the surface of the skin. While wrapping his fist, it releases a slight heat and turns into a solid candle. Unlike the terrifying Candlefire Spitfire, this time, he just compressed and hardened the candle, making it like a steel armor, and equipped it on his arm, without adding micro-dynamite. Using candles and fire breathing at such a close distance is equivalent to dying with Stella's. With an incomparably domineering attitude, Candle Iron Fist slammed down towards Stella's, and together with the cracked candle restraint on his body, it smashed to pieces. Boom. Mr. 3's punch slammed into Stella's chest and knocked him into the air. However, a euro looking at Steerth, who was kicked out more than 10 meters away, Mr. 3 looked solemn and quietly shook his right arm, which was numb and trembling behind him. Iron and steel. Steres stabilized his figure, and the inside of the burst shirt was superimposed on the high-level armament color domineering in the enhanced version of the Navy 6th form, which became extremely firm chest muscles. Haha. What a bad move, Mr. 3. Stells snorted coldly. In this punch, he noticed Mr. 3's most fatal weakness. That is, Mr. 3's overall physical quality is not strong. Not only did the fists swiped by pure power not cause much damage to him, but also helped him escape the shackles of solid candles and capture weaknesses that could affect the situation of the battle. It is indeed a stink move. However, with the lessons learned just now, Styles was nervous, and he didn't dare to underestimate the enemy because of it. Is it? Mr. 3 chuckled lightly, raised his right index finger, and flicked towards Stella's, who was still in the candle field. Whoosh. The fluid candle wriggled and twisted for a while, condensed into a pure white ghost hand and grabbed it towards Stella's. Steres's eyes flashed, the samurai sword in his hand rattled, and he chopped the ghost hand in two with his backhand. Puff, puff. The ghost hand that was divided into two turned into an ordinary candle again and melted into the candle field. Before Steres could breathe a sigh of relief, the next second, his pupils shrank suddenly, and a strong sense of crisis hit him. I saw that there are candle ghost hands generated from the candle field, divided into two divided into four, and finally evolved into a dense jungle of ghost hands, countless, like a group of demon claws sticking out from hell. This is not the end. Among the candle ghosts, there are also candle weapons with strange shapes such as candle hammer, candle knife, candle spear, and candle harpoon. This is the move that Mr. 3 created on a whim based on the candle field. Its name is a euro. The realm unfolds, candle purgatory, swish swish. The overwhelming candle ghost hands attacked Stella's like a white wave, echoing it, and the candle weapons that were chopped down from time to time. Stella's flickered in shape and was as fast as a ghost. Paper painting, shaving, and iron blocks were used as shields to resist candle weapons, and pointed spears, slashing feet and powerful slashes were used as guns for destroying candle ghost hands. Tossing and turning among the candles. As a veteran lieutenant general of the Navy, the effect of the 6 types of Navy that he exerted with all his strength is quite terrifying. Especially combined with his own armed color and knowledge color, it is like a humanoid tank in the shape of a hedgehog. Wherever he goes, the candle products are instantly crushed and turned into white debris in the sky. However, Mr. 3 was not surprised by this. At present, he has not yet strengthened the hardness value of the wax fruit, and the domineering of the armed color has just started. It is a bit unscientific to rely on these two things to solve the Stellas. Buta euro. Mr. 3 wiped off the sweat dripping from his forehead, folded his chest with his hands, raised his butt, and sat down directly into the air behind him. Then, he sat firmly on the candle throne generated by the candle field. The terrifying thing about this candle purgatory is not the attack of weapons that cannot be prevented, but the candles that never stop flowing. Whoosh whoosh. Stella's went on a rampage and just broke through the obstruction of the candle ghost hand and came to a position 5 meters in front of Mr. 3. A new round of ghost hands plus weapons were generated again, forcibly forcing him to retreat again and again. Boom. After smashing the candle harpoon that stabbed in the face, Steers, who suffered varying degrees of injuries to his side face, arms, and abdomen, deeply realized that it was absolutely impossible to go on like this. In this damn candle swamp, Mr. 3 in the central area is the absolute ruler. If you want to get close and cause damage to him, in addition to using absolute crushing overbearing power to break through the obstruction of all candle weapons, you can only overturn the entire candle area. And obviously, Styles, who had tasted a failure, directly rejected the former out of prudence. And so a Euro Stellas made a decisive decision, feinted and slashed at Mr. 3, then turned around and ran, escaping the coverage of candle purgatory with lightning speed. Want to run? Mr. 3 immediately guessed what Steers was thinking, stood up from the candle throne, a candle ice skating blade was born under his feet, and his arms swayed from side to side. Unexpectedly, ice slid on the smooth candle ground, and it was extremely fast. Stellas, who escaped from the candle purgatory, stepped on the solid dirt with one foot, and was about to smash the candle along with the ground with a knife. When he turned his head, his field of vision showed the figure of Mr. 3 galloping forward. So fast. Iron and steel. Steers was shocked. When he saw Mr. 3's face, it was almost his body's natural reaction. Boom. In the blink of an eye, Mr. 3 clenched the candle iron fist on Stella's face, and hit the still-standing Stereth with precision. Same as last time, in a head-to-head situation, candle iron fist couldn't break Steers' defense at all, and it broke every inch from the surface where the two sides were in contact. Give up, Mr. 3, with your level of attack, it's impossible to attack me. What? A smile appeared at the corner of Steerth's mouth, and it solidified in an instant. Puff. The viscous candles mixed with tiny gunpowder overflowed from the inside of the broken iron fist, and with the tendency of head-to-head, it was wrapped in all directions by Steerless. Stells was horrified and wanted to dodge, but with his high-strength iron blocks and armed domineering, he stopped in place and couldn't make any evasive action in an instant. I can only watch more and more fluid candles wrap my body layer by layer. It's really hard to shake your defense with my own strength, but my fruit ability can. Mr. 3 pulled his arm away from the candle that was connected to Stella's and jumped behind him. In the state of being in the air, he raised his candle fingers and wiped the bun that was burning with flames on the top of his head, and asked Steerless, who looked across the air, Lieutenant General, do you know what art is? Without waiting for Steers to respond, he threw the burning candle block in his hand. The faint light of the fire illuminated his handsome face, and also burned out the confidence in the iron block in Steers's eyes. Art is explosion. As Mr. 3's voice fell, the candle and flamethrower that tightly wrapped Steers was completely detonated. Boom. The overlapping explosions instantly drowned Steers, and the scorching flames shot out into the sky along with the thick smoke from the intense burning of the candles, which lasted for a long time. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Standing at a safe distance, Mr. 3's chest rose and fell, panting slowly. Although this trick of flying, candle, and fire breathing will not cause damage to itself, the difficulty and failure rate of the implementation are multiplied, and it is easy to be avoided or freed. The reason why he took the risk of using this move on the extremely mobile Steerth was mainly because he predicted that Stereth would use a high-strength iron block to resist the attack as before. Anyone who has read the original book knows that the iron nugget of the Navy's sixth form is a pure and grievous skill. When it is used, it will put debuffs on itself called blind confidence and don't move. And Mr. 3 is through this super information that only the audience can discover, when both physical and mental strength are reaching their limits. Take the risk and win by surprise. Regardless of how easy Mr. 3 was during the entire battle, only he knew how difficult it was to win the battle with Vice Admiral Steers of the Navy headquarters. Whether it is 2 high-density candles, a big fire, or a candle purgatory in a large area, it is a great consumption of his physical strength. Especially in candle purgatory, he needs to pour spiritual power into every ghost hand and every weapon, and control them to launch precise, powerful and fast attacks on Stellas. At the same time, it is necessary to continuously release the fruit ability to maintain the stability of the entire candle field, thereby ensuring that the high-intensity attack is stable and lasting. Because of this, he would have a cold sweat in front of his eyes at a certain moment, and he had no choice but to sit on the candle chair to rest. It's just that he hides his inferiority very well, and what he reveals to the outside world has always been a relaxed and calm expression. If Stellas, who was in candle purgatory, was 5 meters away from Mr. 3, he could abandon his extra suspicions and defenses and launch a charge with all his strength. Mr. 3 would really have no spare energy to defend him. But how could Stellas, who had just suffered from the loss of underestimating the enemy and was bound by solid candles, abandon the point spirit that he had just picked up? It can only be said that Mr. 3 is a natural genius when it comes to fighting talent and playing with people's hearts. Of course, the biggest reason why his performance was so dazzling was the domineering lecture hall of Mr. Rayleigh. You must know that the domineering special training for 7 days and 7 nights contains not only pure theoretical guidance, but also the special training of the devil. That is to say, can I just try my best to get rid of a vice admiral of the Navy headquarters? Mr. 3 muttered to himself, his expression a little gloomy. Although this is already one of the best records in the pirate world, it is far from enough when compared to the top combat power. You must know that the gap between the admiral and the vice admiral is an insurmountable abyss. By the way, that guy shouldn't be dead, right? If he died, there might be a lot of trouble. Mr. 3 put aside his extra thoughts and looked up at the billowing smoke after the flames dissipated in front of him. His pupils suddenly shrank. I saw a burly figure with a tattered shirt walk out slowly in the dark black smoke. He walked steadily, his eyes were sharp, and his samurai sword flashed with cold light. You really exceeded my expectations, Mr. 3. Stellas's entire body was burned red by the high-temperature flames, blood spilled from the corners of his mouth, and his breathing was short, apparently suffering a lot of trauma. But it is too early to say that the limit is reached. Sure enough, the powerhouses in the pirate world have amazingly thick blood bars. Mr. 3 sighed heavily, then the slump on his face dissipated, replaced by a confident smile. He's going to have a final battle with Styles, you too, Lieutenant General. Whoosh. Just as Mr. 3 was ready to use his abilities to attack, a gust of wind suddenly blew up above his head, blowing out his burning figure 3 hairstyle. Looking up, I saw a pair of long white legs flashed across the field of vision. In the next second, Stearth, who was bewildered on the opposite side, was kicked away by a domineering and arrogant force, and his body flew out like a cannonball. Bang bang bang. Countless towering giant trees were smashed along the way, and finally crashed into a certain hill in Qiwuhai, Bali. Steers vomited blood, twisted his neck, and completely passed out. Damn it, the concubine has forgotten such an important thing. What's the situation? Looking at Hancock, who suddenly appeared in front of him, Mr. 3 blinked his eyes at a loss. His mind was a little hard to turn around. Hancock, who successfully kicked the head with K, didn't care so much. Her beautiful eyes were full of anger as she walked slowly, and her tone was extremely cold. The good thing about daring to spoil your concubine, let's talk about it, Mr. 3. What kind of death do you want? What? Haven't I been fighting with Stellas all the time? When do I have time to do something bad for you? At first, Mr. 3 was still confused by some monks, but when he calmed down and thought about it, he realized why Hancock was so angry. After evacuating from the Amazon Lily Kingdom, Hancock's heart has been holding back his anger. He said last night that he would go to Qiwuhai, Bali to move his muscles and bones, but the only lieutenant general in the Navy who could make her fight to the fullest was cut off by him, consuming most of her stamina. It seems that you already know what the concubine mentioned. Dare to take the concubine's prey away. You must have made up your mind to be beaten in place of Styris, right? Hancock took a step forward with his slender legs, moved his wrists, and his beautiful eyes exuded murderous intent. Did you stretch your head over by yourself, or did you walk over by yourself? Misunderstanding, misunderstanding. Mr. 3 backed away with a dry smile. It can be clearly felt that Hancock at this time did not use the domineering look, but the oppression released by those indifferent and unfeeling eyes is definitely not inferior to the domineering look. After barely drawing the veteran Vice Admiral Styras, Mr. 3 also had some confidence in his own strength. At his peak, he might be able to fight Hancock twice, but now he is in a state of gasping. Forget it. People will die. Seeing that Mr. 3 didn't stick his head out, Hancock was expressionless and started to move forward. A sense of oppression that was so strong that it almost turned into reality hit him. Looking at Hancock, who was pressing step by step and his momentum was gradually rising, Mr. 3 was sweating coldly on his forehead. He only felt a pair of invisible giant hands grabbing his throat, and even breathing became difficult. At the critical moment, the corner of Mr. 3's eyes inadvertently glanced over the base camp in the distance and landed on Bucky on the balcony. Suddenly, a fire called hope ignited in the eyes of despair. The eyes of the two were intertwined at this moment, and in just a few seconds, a profound spark of information collided. Mr. 3. Base, danger, quick help. Bucky. Who are you? Stop barking. Mr. 3. Brother, I managed to find Hancock and defeated the Vice Admiral again. You won't help me with this? Bucky. Are you making an international joke? That is the pirate empress who is known for her brutality and viciousness. What can I help you with? The special march bomb under the soles of your feet. Mr. 3. Mudge bomb is enough. Give her a shot in the back, it will definitely work. Bucky rolled his eyes. I don't know if it works, but it must be me who got quaked. Come on, old man, stop talking nonsense, and be honest with this beating. Afterwards, the corner of his mouth twitched, and he whistled, as if it had nothing to do with him hanging up high. Mr. 3's eyes suddenly turned fierce. If that's the case, then I can't blame me. Bucky immediately noticed something was wrong, and grabbed the balcony fence with both hands. The facial features of the clown's face were distorted, and the expression in the panic state was quite exaggerated. He didn't make a sound, but his lips moved quite a lot. 3, no, third brother, third master. Think about it, when we were in the same pair of trousers in the advanced city, we had something to say. Don't be impulsive, don't be impulsive. Mr. 3 was too lazy to pay attention to him, and looked back at Hancock, who was in front of him. Wait a minute, Hancock. The one who wears the same pair of pants as you in Pushin City is Mr. 3 in the original book. What does it have to do with Lao Tzu? He coughed lightly and offered Hancock a very friendly and reasonable suggestion. As you can see, I don't have much physical strength right now. I'll fall down if I touch it, and it's not interesting to fight. If you really want a hearty battle, I think that on Kalai Bali at this time, only our powerful and mighty captain, Bucky the Clown, can do it. When we talked about Qiwuhai before, Captain Bucky also mentioned that you are a great threat to him, Hancock, and I really want to fight with you. Hancock's eyes lit up, and he said in a deep voice, although there is a suspicion of misfortune, what you said does make sense. After that, she turned around and looked at Bucky the Clown floating on the balcony in the distance, and raised her eyebrows. The dark blue eyes that are enough to fascinate thousands of men burst out with a powerful breath, and they landed on Bucky accurately at a distance of dozens of meters. Being watched by the world's #1 beauty with such a serious look, Bucky's first reaction was, beauty, it's simply too beautiful. The second reaction is, damn Galdino, you fucking don't talk about martial arts. Although he didn't know why Hancock suddenly wanted to do something to Mr. 3, and he couldn't hear what Mr. 3 said to Hancock, but turning his head and looking into the distance, he was kicked into the hill, and until now, he still doesn't know whether he is alive or dead. The only thing Bucky can be sure of at this time is, if Hancock is allowed to do it, the bigger hill next door will be his home. Yalida. Mochi. Kabaji. Leaky. In a panic, Bucky suddenly thought that his life and death brothers were still standing by his side, and his heart suddenly felt a lot more confident. But when he looked back, this extra confidence instantly turned into pale despair. I saw Yalida and the others who were standing side by side with Bucky just now. I don't know when, they have retreated again and again, and they have shrunk to the corner of the base camp. At this time, he is pretending to condolence to the wounded there. Damn it. You bastards. Bucky felt sad from the bottom of his heart, and he had completely lost hope for these guys. Damn, I still have expectations for you. The sad eyes of such a dying person fell into the eyes of the younger brothers in the base camp, but it became a kind of pity and distress. Captain Bucky. You don't have to worry that the aftermath of the battle will affect us, we can withstand this small scene. We have all heard from Lord Arita about the situation. Since the Pirate Queen wants to challenge you, let's take action and beat her to the ground. Go on, Captain Bucky. Let the Pirate Empress see your terrifying and boundless strength. The younger brothers were moved to tears by Captain Bucky's caring and carefulness, and cheered up one after another. Bucky was also moved when he caught Hancock's increasing fighting spirit in the distance. I was so moved that I even wanted to do it and sew up their damn mouth with a needle and thread. And Arita, a black-bellied woman, must be taking revenge for what happened just now, right? When Mr. 3 suppressed Steera's, Arita once mentioned that she was going to fight, but he turned back with, "You can still play now." Woman. What a terrifying and dangerous monster. Bucky regrets the beginning, but there is nothing he can do. Because Hancock in the distance released a monster-like coercion, his footsteps moved slightly, and he had already begun to walk towards this side. Grandmas, both sides are dead. This uncle is a big deal to fight with you. Bucky raised his dark and violent eyes to face Hancock, with 8 sharp knives in his hand, posing an attacking stance. Oh. Come on, Captain Bucky. The younger brothers are hot. Captain Bucky? I'll take care of you in the future. Hancock didn't really attack Bucky, and stopped more than 10 meters away from the balcony of the base camp. Why not walk in some more? Because she is not used to looking up at others, even if they are the captain in name now. As for the reason for not fighting with Bucky the Clown, the reason is very simple. Whether you can beat it or not, the result will have serious drawbacks. Unlike Mr. 3, who is a cadre, Bucky is the captain. What he needs is the majesty above everyone, and he cannot be defeated. If Hancock, who had just chosen to join the Bucky Clown Pirates, challenged him and defeated Bucky, it would undoubtedly have swept Bucky's face and offended many members of the Bucky Clown Pirates. This will form a catastrophic obstacle to the subsequent integration and cooperation of the 9 Snake Pirates, and it may even evolve into a contradiction and civil war in the end, making it difficult for them to achieve their ultimate goal of overthrowing the Tianlong people. And if he gets away with Bucky, though the arrogant Hancock doesn't think it's possible, the impact will be even worse. Whether it is Hancock's position in the cadres of the Bucky Pirates, or the members of the 9 Snakes Pirates, they will be inferior and not taken seriously. Compared with the big deal of the 2 pirate groups, this result is even more difficult for Hancock to accept. Therefore, Hancock will walk towards the base camp at a slow speed. In this way, she can have enough time to understand the pros and cons. Damn Mr. 3, it turns out that it is not just a misfortune, but also wants to test the concubine's ability to judge and analyze the situation. Hancock wrote down Mr. 3's contemptuous act for the time being, and looked at Bucky, whose expression became relaxed on the balcony. Although a head-to-head confrontation is impossible, the coercive aura she unleashes along the way is inherently provocative. This is the usual style of the unruly pirate queen. To Hancock's surprise, Bucky's response was quite tough. The clown's eyes exuded a strong self-confidence that was not afraid to fight her. The kind of sharp eyes that put life and death aside, it is definitely not owned by ordinary strong people. Hancock gave such an evaluation in his mind. However, what she didn't know was that Bucky, who had the consciousness of mortal death, simply ignored death, and never thought about the extravagant thing, life. As I expected, Hancock, she has no plans to challenge Bucky. Not far away, Mr. 3 heard Hancock actively calling Bucky, Captain Bucky, and his tense nerves slowly relaxed. As Hancock had in mind, he deliberately pointed the finger at Bucky for the real reason. I just want to verify whether Hancock is a reckless man, who is arrogant and disregarding the overall situation, or a big man, who has a heart to sniff the roses. Although through the contact between the City of 9 Snakes yesterday and the deck of the merchant ship last night, he believes that Hancock's image is definitely fuller, smarter and more cunning than the original. But after all, the experienced mother-in-law was present at the scene to cover, and the intelligence that could be collected was relatively limited, so there was this temporary test. This is very important, and it is directly related to the later stage. Whether Hancock should be regarded as a truly trustworthy partner, or a tool person who simply helps complete system tasks. The final result is clear. Hancock's performance did not disappoint Mr. 3. The only thing that surprised him was that since Hancock didn't challenge Bucky, it meant that she had realized that she was being looked down upon and calculated. According to the arrogant temperament that Pirate Empress Jia will report, shouldn't she turn around and kick him into the hill next to Stella's? How can you be so patient? After thinking about the cause and effect carefully, Mr. 3 probably understood. Mostly, his fight with Steerth was amazing enough, and it showed the terrifying potential of the wax fruit, so that Hancock saw a glimmer of hope and felt that overthrowing the rule of the dragon people was not an unattainable dream. In other words, that is, Hancock completely recognized his potential to become the world's top powerhouse. It's not easy. Looking at Hancock's pretty and tall figure, Mr. 3 couldn't help but let out a sigh. In this way, it is not presumptuous that he tried his best and racked his brains to fight steers. Although at the beginning, he just wanted to test how far he can fight Zhuang and fight Bai, after the fruit ability and 3-color domineering have been strengthened. Mr. 3 was still sighing, but at the base camp, it exploded because of Hancock's understatement. Hey! I heard it right, Hancock, who has the domineering look of the king and is known as the Pirate Queen, called us Captain Bucky? Could it be that Captain Bucky shocked the Pirate Empress with just one look? Hey, damn, how unfathomable this man is. Although it didn't wait for the epic battle between Captain Bucky and the Pirate Queen, this group of Bucky's little fans became even more fanatical. What's more, there is a big man with a beard imitating Hancock's expression, flipping his hair, pouting his lips, and saying, "Captain Bucky, I will take care of you in the future." Ha ha ha. It's too similar, it's too similar. The younger brothers immediately beat their chests and stomped their feet and became a group of joy. Hancock, who was standing below, sank. The invisible powerful aura bloomed, shocking the laughing little brothers to the point where their faces paled, and they shrank in the corner and did not dare to say more. After successfully making the noisy atmosphere quiet again, Hancock tiptoed lightly on his toes and jumped to the front of Bucky, who was stunned and cute. Before coming, Mr. 3 told me the general situation. Hancock rolled his eyes, stared at Bucky, and said in a deep voice, "As I said just now, the entire 9 snake pirates will join your camp. From now on, you will be our captain." With Hancock's personal admission, the entire hall instantly became restless. Except for the unidentified younger brother and the veteran cadres who knew the inside story, they all showed unbelievable horror. Mr. 3, no, it should be called Brother 3 now. He actually did it, which is simply the most difficult thing in the world, successfully recruiting the Pirate Empress to the Clown Bucky Pirates. In the end, how did he do it? Bucky, who is the party involved, behaved relatively calmly, and his facial expression was calm. That's it, the guy from Mr. 3 has already told you, so I won't be hypocritical. Boya Hancock, welcome to the Bucky Pirates. On the surface, in fact, deep in his heart, the pot had already exploded like a volcanic eruption, and his whole body was shocked to pieces. Fuck. 3. This guy really dug up Hancock, not a bullshit alliance, but a real merger. In the face of such a domineering, fierce and powerful powerhouse as Hancock, what will be done to convince her to accept the recruitment? Bucky is very eager to know the answer. If he can, he wants to run down and ask Mr. 3 now. To his surprise, the next second, Hancock, who was standing on the opposite side with a serious expression, gave the answer. Yes, the 9 snake pirates are willing to do their best to help you on the road to hit the Holy Land Mary Joa, overthrow the rule of the Tianlong people, and completely end the evil in this world. Hearing this, Bucky reached out and rubbed the messy beard on his chin, and nodded in agreement. Oh, so that's the case. 3 told you that I'm going to hit the Holy Land Mary Joa and overthrow the Tianlong. Wait, what did you say? As he spoke, Bucky, who realized that something was wrong, with a calm expression on his face, changed frame by frame at a speed visible to the naked eye. First, he was stunned by the movement of rubbing his beard, his facial muscles trembled slightly, his snot bubbles slipped out of his nostrils, his eyeballs protruded a little and jumped out of their sockets, and his chin dropped quickly and landed on the ground. Take slap on Mary Joa, push to overthrow the Tianlong rule? Behind Bucky, who was almost scared to pee, many of the younger brothers finally couldn't help but let out an earth-shattering exclamation. Mark the Holy Land Mary Joa and overthrow the rule of the Tianlong people? No, I didn't expect your goal, Captain Bucky, to be so grand and lofty. Even One Piece wouldn't dare to have such an idea. Damn it. As a little brother, we are stupid and have to learn your dream from someone else's mouth. I thought that Captain Bucky's ambition was to become the strongest in the world, but I never thought that I was still superficial after all. Bucky. The voice of the maddened support of the younger brothers stimulated Bucky's confidence to some extent. I saw him retract the fright on his face at the speed of light, rubbed his beard again in his palms, spread his arms arrogantly, and shouted, "Aha, ahahaha, Bastard Mr. 3, even told you such a thing. If that's the case, then I won't pretend, and the showdown will be over. That's right. Completely end the darkness of this era. This is the real goal of this uncle, the mere one piece. What a piece of shit. As soon as these words came out, the people who were frightened immediately became Arita and Mochi and others in the back. Several people looked at each other, and they all saw in each other's eyes that they were at a loss. Hey, isn't it? What the hell is that guy doing? Don't lose yourself in the nurturing embrace, Bucky, you're a mess. Brothers, is it still too late to jump off the bus? I suddenly remembered that there is an 80-year-old mother in my hometown who needs to be supported. Wait, Niche, aren't you a lion? Where did the old mother in need of support come from? I'm making up now. Ah, no, lions can't have old mothers? In the end, Alrita, who was still online with IQ, narrowed her eyes and saw that something was wrong. Can you take a closer look with your brains? Is there any way out for Bucky now? The people who read the information from Alrita's eyes all looked up at Bucky, who was straight. Through Bucky, they saw Hancock whose brows gradually relaxed from the frowning state. After a little thought, they suddenly realized. Yup. From the words of the Pirate Queen, it can be heard very clearly that the reason she agreed to join the Bucky Pirates is because of the so-called overthrowing the rule of the Tianlong people. If Bucky denies it at this time, it will undoubtedly expose the lie of the third brother, and completely anger the monster boy Hancock. At that time, what the Bucky Pirates need to deal with is the anger of the entire 9 Snake Pirates. This is more terrifying than being surrounded and suppressed by the Vice Admiral. Unexpectedly, Bucky's on-the-spot reaction was quite fast, although he looked a little overwhelmed. The few people who understood the logic of it nodded lightly, no longer surprised. On the contrary, the younger brothers behind him were still shouting Bucky's name madly. It was not until the cherry-pink light passed through the body that the group of little fans who were instantly petrified were willing to stop. It's a bunch of noisy and lowly male creatures. Hancock's eyes exuded disgust. Beside him, Bucky, who passed by the pink light, was secretly relieved. It's okay, not accidentally injured. About the transfer and merger of the 2 pirates and the agreement, we will discuss with you the wife of the 9 Snakes Pirates, Hancock said slowly. For her, it only needs to be sure that Bucky wants to overthrow the dragon rule, or has the determination to do so. She was too lazy to participate in the remaining cumbersome and complicated treaty agreements and could not participate. No problem at all. Bucky naturally agreed happily, and at the same time, his admiration for Mr. 3 emerged spontaneously. Although the process is definitely not so simple, just a few words will fool the savvy Hancock into the Bucky Pirates, but in any case, this has become a reality, not a dream. Simply acknowledging the goal of overthrowing the Tianlong people can bring a strong man like Hancock under his banner, so don't make too much money. As for whether to hit the Holy Land Mary Joa, who knows how long it will take. Thinking about it, Bucky smiled in his heart. Then next, Hancock turned to look down, and saw that the elite Marines who barely resisted her overlord coercion had already turned into a horrified stone sculpture when she came up to meet Bucky. She let them in advance. Completely lost the ability to eavesdrop on intelligence. These sailors and Stellas, what are you going to do with them? Hearing this, Bucky's eyes sank, and he said coldly, since you dare to declare war with us, you must plan to be buried here. Those unimportant soldiers don't matter. As for Styles. Whoosh. Below the balcony, the viscous fluid candle held Mr. 3 up a little bit and came here. Then, before Bucky finished speaking, Mr. 3 threw the 2 smelly feet in his hand back to Bucky and said in a deep voice. Those unimportant soldiers don't matter. As for Steerth, killing him is a relief, but for us now, the drawbacks are too great. Seeing Bucky, who was bending over to put his feet back on his ankles, with a puzzled face, Mr. 3 explained aloud. If you kill Stellas, who is the Vice Admiral of the Navy headquarters here, it is equivalent to officially issuing the Navy headquarters a never-ending death sentence. Warbook. At that time, the person who comes to this island again may be a general-level combat power. General? Bucky was taken aback. Hancock's performance is more calm. This is a matter of course, after all, the influence and status of the Vice Admiral of the Navy is there. Seeing that Bucky calmed down a little, Mr. 3 continued. Now what we need most is time for vulgar development. We are racing against time to recruit more Qiwuhai and quietly develop and strengthen our forces. it is really not suitable for confronting the Navy. As long as we don't offend the Navy to death and know that Hancock and the 9 snake pirates have joined us, we won't be stupid enough to launch a second round of crusade against the 2 Qiwuhai forces in a short period of time. Having said this, Mr. 3 sighed heavily. Doflamingo is indeed right. The kings of this sea are always the Navy and the dragon people. People can arbitrarily define justice, they can arbitrarily tear up treaties, launch crusades against Qiwuhai, or even encircle and hunt them down. However, they had to act cautiously and consider many influences. After finishing speaking, Mr. 3 apologized and said to Bucky, who stared at him suddenly, "I'm sorry, Bucky, I accidentally said everything you wanted to say." Cough cough. Bucky the clown coughed a few times to moisten his throat. After adjusting his facial expression, he raised his hand and patted Mr. 3's shoulder. "3 don't you say that, it's a shame, we 2 brothers, whoever said the same thing? Asshole." Hancock frowned slightly, looking at the 2 old men in front of him, with an inexplicable illusion of being fooled, but he really couldn't say that something was wrong. Received 2 minutes of admiration from Captain Bucky. Clown Bucky, the core members Yorita, Kabaji, Mochi, Niji, and Hancock have a +1 appearance, a 2% increase in physical fitness, a 1% increase in the total fruit development progress, and a 1% increase in the progress of domineering cultivation, fruitless. Listening to the system prompt sound that suddenly came from the back of his mind, Mr. 3 was slightly stunned. Bucky's admiration, and this gain effect. It is not surprising that it is Captain Bucky who is inseparable from the strongest Imperial subsystem. The whole Bucky pirates can't be, but his strength has been improving rapidly, right? In fact, Mr. 3 had similar doubts before, or disliked it. It was obviously his own plugin, so why would he be linked to the parallel import of Bucky? Is it possible that he will really push this guy to the throne of Pirate King in the future? Just change to a redhead, Kaido, etc., it is much stronger than Bucky. Thinking about it in depth, combined with the original setting in the system's description of the Bucky Camp Lucky S buff, although he was reluctant to admit it, Mr. 3 still thought of a possibility. Bucky's domineering, lucky look is too terrifying, and even a metaphysical thing like the system can establish an inexplicable connection. Anyway, in the future, in front of Bucky, I still have to pretend less. Mr. 3 secretly made a decision in his heart. Just kidding. How can he pretend to be a blessing to others? Benefiting others without benefiting oneself. That's what great good people do. What's more, his own brother. Since the crisis in Kalai Bali has been lifted, the concubine and others will return to Blakesing Island first, and there are still many things to be arranged. Hancock's expression changed slightly, he threw his cloak smartly behind him, and jumped off the balcony railing. As for the subsequent handover of the pirate group, Mr. 3, you can just inform me again. The beautiful voice of Yuji drifted from the balcony with a fragrant wind. So, under the watchful eyes of Bucky and Mr. 3, the original 9 snake pirates, including Hancock, left the devastated Kalai Bali. On the way, Hancock was gloomy and silent the whole time, until he boarded the ship and set sail, and after making sure that there was no one else around, he quietly asked Sandasonia and Marigold, "You guys, do you feel that I have changed again? Beautiful?" As the world's #1 beauty, Hancock is naturally quite sensitive to his appearance under the perception of seeing and seeing. Even if there is only a little face value, you can feel it. Sandasonia and Marie Groud fought each other's spirits, looked at Sister Hancock's face seriously, and then nodded heavily. "Sister, it has become more beautiful indeed." Haha. Sure enough, it seems that this Kalai Bali is quite suitable for me. Hancock's mouth curled into a small smile. Although she knew it well, the 2 younger sisters didn't see any change at all. On the other side, inside the Kalai Bali base camp. So, what should these guys do? Looking at the stone statues all over the ground behind him, Mr. 3 and Bucky, who had reacted, looked at each other and saw the blankness in each other's eyes. Arita and the others, who were not petrified, quickly approached. As soon as he opened his mouth, he praised Mr. 3 without hesitation. "Fuck. Brother 3. At first, I thought you were bragging, but I didn't expect that the Pirate Empress was dug up. In this case, we finally have a strong person we can rely on, which is simply God's blessing. Speaking of 3 brothers, you usually hide quite deep, even the Vice Admiral can defeat it. Compared to your strength, I care more about your appearance. Although you still have that face, Why do you look so handsome? Yalita, who was carrying a mace, found the point. As soon as these words came out, everyone, including Bucky, also lit up, frowned and looked puzzled. Indeed, Three's temperament looks really different, with clear eyes and beautiful eyes, no longer as wretched as before. A euro. Listening to the compliments from those who have always been sarcastic but not good, Mr. 3 was in a good mood and silently rescinded the decision just now about benefiting others but not oneself. Praise well, be rewarded. Hey! 3, is Daughter Island really that good? It's just a trip, and there is such a change? Bucky's head was separated from his neck and floated against Mr. 3's face. He asked mysteriously, tell me, what did you do on that island known as a man's paradise? Fuck. I'm on business. What do you mean by those ambiguous eyes? Mr. 3 grabbed Bucky's hair and flung it out of the balcony. Bucky's head stayed in the air for a few seconds, then swayed and floated back to his neck. After taking back the ridicule on his face, he said seriously, just kidding, but to be honest, I'm really curious. That's right. Alrita and the others followed. Mr. 3 thought for a while, and the curiosity of these people was completely drawn out. If you don't say anything, it will be more annoying later. So, he coughed lightly and briefly explained his experience in the Amazon Lily Kingdom to Bucky and the others. Including the debate with Hancock's mother-in-law, the battle with the Snake Sisters, and the collision with Hancock's breath, and even the incident of being robbed by pirates. He said it very easily, but everyone in Bucky could clearly feel the dangers looming in it. Any error in any part of this is the rhythm of corpses sinking into the sea. I see a euro. Bucky looked up at Mr. 3 and nodded thoughtfully. Just when everyone thought he was going to make some touching remarks, this guy suddenly changed the topic. I understand 3. The reason why your temperament can change so much must be because of being petrified several times. As he spoke, the look on Bucky's face became more and more determined. Well, it's definitely like this. If there is a chance another day, I have to ask Hancock to give me a few petrochemical rays to try. If possible, I'd like to make my red nose a little rounder and more red. Looking at his smug look in fantasy, Alrita and the others shrugged and were speechless. Is this the point, my Captain Bucky? Mr. 3 stared at Bucky's red nose for a few times, and truthfully said what he was thinking. That will only make you look uglier, right? What are you talking about, Candleman? Bucky was instantly furious, and his backhand spurted his right palm, and a knife slashed on Mr. 3's head. Red nose is his taboo. What about you, bastard Bucky? Just say it if you want to fight. Naturally, Mr. 3 couldn't get used to Bucky, and he rolled up his sleeves and scuffled with Bucky on the spot. The scene was once in chaos. After the fight, Mr. 3, Bucky and several cadres stood in a row on the balcony railing, looking up at the devastated Qiwuhai Bali after the war. Before departure, Mr. 3's request to Bucky and others to hold Qiwuhai Bali has been realized, but the price is not small, and the subsequent reconstruction will take a lot of time. This is an absolute thing to do. After all, Qiwuhai Bali is the same as Big Mom's Cake Island and Kaido's Wano country. It is the base camp of the Clown Bucky pirates, and it is also a necessary facade to attract other powerhouses. Speaking of which, 3, have you really awakened the domineering arrogance? Why can't I believe it when I see your face that says, I'm weak? Bucky covered his blue and purple eye sockets, and his words were full of doubts. Mr. 3 did not hide the matter of awakening the Overlord in Nine Snakes City. Mr. 3 held a cold towel in his hand and gently applied it to the 2 large bags that grew out of his forehead, and replied calmly, did I not use the Overlord color once when I first landed on the island? Who were those seamen stunned? Bucky stuck out his tongue and licked his swollen lips, shook his head, and said, stop fooling us, that is clearly Hancock's domineering. Don't think we don't know she is the holder of the 3-color domineering. What is certain is that Mr. 3 did not awaken the domineering before leaving Qiwuhai Bali. Just a trip to Nine Snake Island, without even 2 days, he awakened and mastered the Overlord? There must be a limit to bragging. Not even Captain Roger is so scary. Yes. That's impossible. Brother 3, what kind of talent do you have, can we not know? The animal trainer Mochi and others also expressed disbelief. The more they know about Mr. 3, the less they believe that this guy can awaken the Overlord. This kind of thing is as exaggerated as Bucky's sudden awakening of the fruit power and tearing the whole world apart. However, What they couldn't even imagine was that the person standing beside him at this time was not the timid Mr. 3 in his memory, but a transmigrator with the qualifications of a king. Hee, you are still too young. Mr. 3 saw the contempt in the eyes of these people, turned around, and gestured back to the astonished Bucky and the others. If that's the case, let's try to give you a feel for what it means to be a tyrant. Back off. I'm going to start pretending. Ahem, I'm going to start releasing domineering. He decided to use the facts to make Bucky and others shut up completely. Feeling the inexplicably powerful aura emanating from Mr. 3's body, Bucky and the others couldn't help but swallow a saliva, moved their footsteps, and stepped back into the hall of the palace. At the same time, I was shocked. This momentum, this confidence, could it be said that Mr. 3 is really not bragging? Mr. 3 was very satisfied with their facial expressions. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and he shouted, "Be careful, don't pass out." At the moment when Bucky and the others held their breath and their hearts were in their throats, Mr. 3 opened his arms and released his domineering arrogance with all his strength. Coming. Bucky and a few people were ready, his muscles were tensed, and he didn't even dare to open his eyes. That's the domineering look of a tyrant. If you really can't hold back and faint on the spot, you won't be laughed at by this group of people for the rest of your life. In this way, in their highly concentrated state, time passed little by little. For a second, nothing happened. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Swoosh. It was the sea breeze that blew past Kalai Bali before, skipped Mr. 3 with a weird posture, and then skipped the slightly scared Bucky crowd, and then, embarrassedly, slipped away from the floor to ceiling windows on the other side of the hall. Despite this, he still couldn't take away the embarrassment in the field at this time. I'm sorry. Both physical and mental strength were used up in the battle with Stella's just now, and it seems that I can't release the Overlord for the time being. Mr. 3 was panting, standing on the edge of the big balcony and scratching his head awkwardly. Grandma, she forgot about such a crucial matter. Good guy, Mr. 3, you are so damn good looking, even my uncle fooled you. Bucky, who reacted, scolded, laugh out loud, you have successfully fooled us all. Mr. 3 reluctantly spread his hands. Bucky, I know this is a big blow to you, but I did awaken the Overlord domineering. Haha, I'm laughing to death, you see, this guy is still pretending. Hearing this, Bucky laughed happily. Seeing Mr. 3's unmoved appearance, his face covered in clown makeup also became a little gloomy, and a strange and inexplicable smile appeared on his mouth. Hey, really, there's nothing you can do about it. 3 The Overlord arrogance is not something you can just talk about. Saying that, Bucky stepped out and opened his arms like Mr. 3 just now, with a serious and domineering expression. At a certain moment, his aura suddenly changed. Take a good look, this is called domineering and domineering. At the moment when the voice fell, the terrifying coercion radiated in all directions centered on Bucky, who was wearing a red robe. Plop, plop. Under Mr. 3's shocking and unbelievable gaze, Mochi, Cabbage, and Lionleaky, who were standing beside Bucky, were all horrified, and their whole bodies trembled violently. Afterwards, his eyes rolled, and he couldn't bear Bucky's Overlord color and fainted, lying on the ground and twitching wildly. Even Arita, who has always been calm, dropped the mace with a swaying sound. Her slender legs were clamped, and her pretty face fell softly to the ground. Bucky, who was at the center of the imposing storm, fluttered violently with his red robe under the influence of the Overlord-colored shockwave. After seeing Arita and others falling to the ground, he couldn't help but let out a wild and wanton laugh. Wow, ha ha ha. Seeing that there is no Mr. 3, this is the real domineering. This. Mr. 3 only felt his brain buzzing and was a little confused. What's the situation? I haven't heard the Oda dog thief mention that Bucky has a domineering look. Could it be that, according to the rumors on the internet, Bucky's setting is actually a hidden master of the same level as the red hair? In addition to being shocked, Mr. 3's eyes fell on the lion niche, who was still twitching after falling to the ground. He raised his head and looked at the big red robe behind Bucky, who was fluttering in a rather strange posture, and the horror in his heart disappeared. Almost got Bucky. Take back the separated palm in the Dahongpao, and the few people who are performing on the ground and pulling their hips, stop pretending. Mr. 3, who saw through everything, said leisurely. Hearing what he said, as expected, Mochi and the others who were lying on the ground stood up, raised their hands and patted their dusty clothes. No shit at all. Bucky, who was seen through, also put down his torn palm, and the clown's face was filled with a smug smile. Ahahaha. 3. Your expression just now is really wonderful. Mr. 3 rolled his eyes, ignored Bucky, a stupid pig with a normal brain, and looked at Alrita, who had picked up his mace again. Alrita, when did you become so funny, and you still cooperate with Bucky to do such a boring thing? Hearing this, Alrita, who was dressed in a cool outfit, turned her head sideways, glanced at the mace covered with spikes on her shoulders, and said slowly, I'm just happy that you haven't awakened the Overlord, because at least, this put the mace with my stomach, it can be saved. I think the same is true for Mochi and the others, especially Niji. Maybe at this time, he is very lucky that he doesn't have to be eaten. Mr. 3. What a vicious bet you guys made behind my back. In the end, Mr. 3 still did not show the domineering in front of the Bucky crowd. After all, this is an irrelevant matter, and those who should know will always know that, when they are caught off guard, they can startle them, but they can pretend to be a big force. After a brief rest, about noon, Mr. 3 used a special phone bug to contact Hancock, Zappo and others. Time is running out, and if you delay for one more minute, the situation in Pirate World may change dramatically. The period he traveled through is too special, and there is not much time to dawdle. Soon, pulled by 2 giant sea snakes, Hancock and the core cadres of the original 9 snake pirates, who were on a small merchant ship, reboarded Qiwuhai Bali and came to the base camp of the Bucky pirates. The first thing to do, of course, is to remove the petrification of the elite sailors and pirates. The pirate brother is okay, except for the admiration for Captain Bucky's grand dream still remains in his mind. He did not show much fear of Hancock. After all, such a powerful and beautiful woman has been confirmed to join the Bucky pirates, and she is the thigh of the same camp as them. As for the seamen who had recovered their sanity, they gathered in the corner with terrified faces, shivering. Following Mr. 3's previous arrangement, the Bucky pirates did not kill the killers, but let them run to detain Stearth, who was embedded in the hill. Although he was seriously injured, his vital signs were still obvious. After a brutal beating by the Bucky pirates and the original 9 snake pirates, the surviving sailors fled Qiwuhai Bali in despair with the seriously injured Stellas. At the beginning of the encirclement and suppression meeting, the spirit of the meeting was gone. And they survived by luck, and there is another role, to return the important information of the 9 snake pirates, including the female Emperor Hancock, to the clown Bucky pirates, and send it back to the Navy headquarters. In this way, the Navy will not rashly launch a second encirclement and suppression operation against Qiwuhai Bali. After successfully solving the trouble of the Navy and Stairs, under the instruction of Mr. 3, the female warriors of the 9 snake pirates threw themselves into the repair work of Qiwuhai Bali. The Bucky Express mercenary group and the members of the pirate group scattered all over the world could not come to Qiwuhai Bali in a short time. In this way, the task of rebuilding the island naturally fell on the crew of the original 9 snake pirates. At the beginning, these female warriors who were eager to fight were still reluctant and disdained to do the hard work of moving bricks. But when they found that it was a relief to lift up a large piece of gravel and threw it hard, they acted willingly. Are these guys as strong as birds of prey really ordinary women? Bucky, Cabbage and other cadres stood on the balcony, and fell into deep thought when they heard the constant sound of swish, swish, and the blasting sound of boom and boom. The 9 snakes pirates, all of them are brave masters. After a simple clean-up, the second floor of the base camp is in the gorgeously decorated conference hall. Mr. 3, Bucky, Arita and other cadres, as well as the Hancock group of 4 took their seats and started the first official meeting after the 9 snake pirates joined the Bucky pirates. The content of the meeting can be divided into 2 parts from the overall direction. First, the treaties and principles that the Bucky pirates need to abide by after the 9 snake pirates join. After all, it is an all-female pirate group, and there must be a problem that it is difficult to coexist harmoniously with the Bucky pirates who are mixed with fish and dragons. On the other hand, the 9 snakes pirates also had to make corresponding commitments, including obeying Captain Bucky's reasonable instructions, safeguarding the basic interests of the clown Bucky pirates, and so on. All in all, it is a troublesome and tedious issue, which needs to be fully improved in future contacts, and it cannot be settled in 1 or 2 hours. In this session, Mr. 3 slept on the table the whole time. These were not his concerns, and he was too lazy to participate. There is a common goal of working together in the coming era of great chaos to complete the overthrow of the Tianlong people's rule. The attitudes of both sides are very friendly, and the general treaty and rules will soon be determined. As a result, the meeting naturally entered the second link, the direction of action of the Bucky pirates, and which Shicibukai should be selected as the second recruit. This is a link that Mr. 3 needs to participate in, or to be sure, he is leading. The cadres of the Bucky pirates headed by Bucky naturally need not say much. As early as Mr. 3 proposed to secretly set out to recruit the pirate empress, they chose to trust. And Mr. 3 also succeeded in creating a miracle, accomplishing something absolutely impossible in their subjective consciousness, convincing Hancock to accept recruitment and join the Bucky pirates. As for Hancock and Zappo, because they have personally seen and experienced Mr. 3's terrifying mind and unparalleled potential, they also have no opinion and are willing to follow Mr. 3's arrangement. However, when everyone who had reached a tacit understanding turned their attention to Mr. 3, they realized later that the protagonist of the second session was lying on the edge of the conference table in a weird posture, while playing snoring and drooling. Everyone was suddenly speechless. This guy really has the highest IQ in the audience. Is the current wise general of the Bucky pirates responsible? Having experienced Mr. 3's domineering and domineering Mr. 3 and the Snake Man sisters, he almost doubted whether the person in front of him and the domineering Mr. 3 from Nine Snakes City were the same person. Even Hancock, who knew that Mr. 3 was not an ordinary domineering bearer, held his forehead with his hands and had nothing to say. As natives of the pirate world, they naturally cannot understand it. Sleeping in class or in a meeting is the most fragrant. After the silence, Arita, who was sitting next to her, stretched out her long, white fingers from under the table and poked Mr. 3's profile lightly. Tweet. No response. Bucky on the other side would not be so gentle. He raised his hand and slashed horizontally with a knife. The teeth in his mouth became jagged and shouted loudly. This is a very important cadre meeting. You bastard. Be a little more serious to Lao Su. What? Snapped. When the hand knife that was separated from the body was about to hit Mr. 3's forehead, he was still in a state of deep sleep as if he had sensed something, and he quietly activated his domineering look, and his head was tilted and successfully avoided. The ability to unleash the domineering arrogance in an instinctive form is due to the domineering lecture given by Mr. Rayleigh. But after such a fuss, Mr. 3 also slowly opened his hazy eyes and woke up from the sound sleep state. After realizing that the meeting had reached his part, he stretched out his hands and patted his cheeks to clear his mind. Then, he raised his deep eyes to scan the audience. Since everyone believes in me so, then I won't sell anything, I'll just come to the conclusion first. As soon as these words came out, Bucky, Hancock and others put away the relaxed and casual expressions on their faces, and stared at Mr. 3 seriously. I saw Mr. 3 push the goggles on the bridge of his nose and opened his mouth slowly. The next Qiwuhai we are going to recruit, they are